Andrew, very powerful, and with every hurricane, there's that one zone. It's usually 10, maybe 15 miles wide where we get that complete devastation with a major hurricane. This is going to be a wider swath, and with the direction that it's coming on in, that's going to cause maybe even more destruction up the coastline. Andrew only had hurricane force winds 50 miles out, and here we are talking, instead of 50 miles in diameter, 140 miles in diameter with hurricane force winds. And so the further you get closer to the center of that donut around the eye, that eye wall, that's where you're getting those strongest winds. So I did see some video as Irma went over the Caribbean, and I heard one where somebody was recording and they were hunkered down, and it literally sounded like a train or a roaring lion for hours and hours and hours straight. And so people really don't know what they're in for. The folks that are staying think they know what they're in for, but they don't know what they're in for.
Right, and that is what we're really looking at as we head into tomorrow. We are looking at the eye of Irma potentially straddling the coastline as it heads further north, which would put the most dangerous portion of Irma and those highest wind speeds, I should say, right over some of the most highly populated areas of Southwest Florida. And that's why we're looking at the conditions. And you said the term worst case scenario earlier, and that's what we've been saying on Fox 4 Morning News for the past, I would say, week. We've been saying plan for worst case scenario, and unfortunately, this is it. And this is our future cast. This is our predictor. This is what we do expect to happen as it stands right now, and it really is worst case scenario in terms of location of the eye wall right over Southwest Florida, the coastline.
There it is. I mean, I haven't looked back at the records to find that the last time the eye of a hurricane is well developed as this, certainly never likely, has passed right over this region. I've got another friend who's got a house on Sanibel Island, which on Periwinkle, take a left, and he's in that area on a canal not far. And with the last storm that came through, of course, they evacuate the islands, and people can't get back in. And that's for safety purposes. You've got all the power lines down and the trees down. And so...
And with this storm surge with Irma on Sanibel.
Yeah, and we're talking, I think it was, what, 10 to 15?
Up to 12 feet on Sanibel is what we're looking at. Here's a map here. You can see that storm surge potential. We are looking, right now, what the forecast essentially is for storm surge on Sanibel is up to about 12 feet. And you can see that greater than 9 feet above ground red shading there includes so much of our coastline. That's into south portions of Fort Myers. That's into portions of San Carlos Park, Fort Myers Beach, down through Naples, down through, you see Bonita Springs there, down through Marco Island, Sanibel included in that. And
you'll notice where the red pushes in further. That's because of it all depends on the track of the hurricane, how this will get adjusted. And these are inland just a little bit further now because as the storm system continues the track of it, the forecasted track from the hurricane center gets pushed just a little bit further to the west. That brings in more of a southerly breeze and southeasterly wind, which is, again, that worst case scenario we talk about. That pushes more water inland. Fort Myers Beach, I remember the last hurricane coming across. I had another friend who actually wrote it out in a hotel on Fort Myers Beach, and he says it was the worst experience he had ever had. Windows were blown out, the water coming in. They had to keep going up to higher levels in the hotel, and of course staying in interior rooms. You want to stay away from any windows. You don't want to be steering out of the storm. So if you're hunkered down in the center of that, in the center of your building.
And I think that's a thought that people have, the ones that want to stay through these hurricanes is, well, you know, I'm on the 7th floor of my building. I'll be fine with this 12-foot storm surge. But what you don't think about is you will be isolated there with no way to get down until that water recedes. And we're talking about storm surge, the deadliest part of any hurricane, and that's something you don't want to gamble with.
Exactly. It comes up because it is literally when you talk to storm surge, you look at this graphic behind us here, it's if you've ever watched an ocean liner and you look really close at the front, you see a bubble of water right in front of it. It's literally pushing that water. The hurricane, that circulation, spinning the ocean around, the surface of the ocean, is literally pushing a bubble of water inland. And so people can be in the storm and say, well, these waves, they're bad, but I'm back far enough. It's not the waves. The storm surge is separate from the waves. It's literally a raising of the ocean level, of the sea level, and it can happen very dramatically. You bring the level up 1 or 2 feet, and it goes so much further inland because we're dealing with all this flat land, and that's why it catches people off guard. So you never want to be anywhere near the storm surge. When we look at the complete devastation that we see on the island of Barbuda, for instance, the storm surge coming in and just wiping out so many homes, although they were right in the eye wall of this Category 5 storm, many of those homes were actually wiped out even just from the wind itself. And so it's a 1-2 punch here, and Fort Myers, Sanibel Island, Fort Myers Beach, down to Marco Island, Bonita Beach, all these locations here are going to get the storm surge and the catastrophic wind, both.
And there's one more threat that I want to talk about that seems to be increasing. It didn't seem as much of a threat yesterday with the track it's supposed to be east of us. Now we're on the west side, tornadoes. And in fact, we are getting reports of radar-indicated rotation for portions of Monroe and inland Collier County with tornado warning, something that we're expecting as we head into the next day or two. So talk about, you're so good at explaining the little details of here. And Scott's the one that taught me a lot of these basics. So I want you to kind of talk about why this tornado threat is growing for much of Southwest Florida.
Well, we have the circulation going counterclockwise. Over the ocean, there's not much friction over the ocean, just the waves there. And so the wind is howling in a very consistent direction from the bottom of the hurricane upward. As soon as parts of these outer bands start to make their way inland, the friction near the ground slows that wind down a little bit. And what it does is it turns it towards the center of the storm, just slightly. And so what will happen is the wind, that when it hits the land, it will turn a little bit more towards the left. And then the wind above that is still going in the same direction. So now you have what we call wind shear, which is the change of wind with height, and that creates a little bit of a spin, and so we can get spin-ups in any of the existing thunderstorms that are there. We can get those, we want to say small tornadoes, but when you're dealing with a hurricane and you have a tornado in it, they're almost impossible to see when you're out there, but we can detect them on radar, as you mentioned, by looking at the velocity profile.
And that's what we're seeing right now. There's actually a tornado warning in inland Collier County, just south of that Hendry County line, just north of Alligator Alley, with one of these bands sweeping through. If you are in this area, in this red box that you see, polygon that you see here, please take shelter immediately. Unfortunately, just north of Alligator Alley, that means a lot of drivers on the roadways. If we could actually take a look at velocity, that would be really helpful. That warning, that tornado warning, expires at 10:15 this morning. Right now, it is 10:05, so 10 more minutes for that tornado warning. And
it may go further. It looks like they're trying to switch over to the velocity profile here. We can try to get a center of where that storm is. And it's very difficult to see here, as is often the case with these, but there's some lighter reds. But it looks like, again, the key is, though, it is north of Alligator Alley right now. Hopefully, you just wish that there's nobody out there right now. You would think that people will be gone, but I know there are still some stragglers out there.
Well, especially those trying to evacuate on Alligator Alley. If they're headed over to the East Coast right now, there might be drivers in this area. If you know anyone headed that direction, please tell them to seek shelter immediately. We do have those rest stops along Alligator Alley that would be a good option.
And a good time to remind them that you get the Fox 4 app and you can stream live. I've been watching the broadcast when I have been in here watching Danny this morning and got a great signal, and hopefully you've got that signal down there. You can get all the very latest. We'll show you these details as they begin to pop up. We get more and more of these spin-ups that occur as you go back to the radar here, and these are rocketing to the west right now. And I forgot the speed that we had on that. Maybe we can get a speed on this particular one here, but that tornado warning again in effect for about another 8 or 9 minutes. And the motion of everything now again is coming in from east to west as this storm system moves in. Everybody in the general Fort Myers area, we're talking about an east to west, slightly northeast at first, then it will come from the east, and then it will come from the southeast and south. And when it comes southeast and south, that's when the wind will be the strongest, as that maybe even the just east-southeast at the onset of it. We'll be on top of it, of course, as that storm moves through. Also a hail indicator right there as well, which is interesting too.
And this is the first of, unfortunately, many tornadoes warnings that we do expect. Here's details on that hail. It looks like maximum hail size just under 1/4 of an inch.
Yeah, hail, of course, not as big of a deal. It's popular down here in South Florida due to the high freezing level that we have here. But you see it moving west at 33 miles per hour. This is really rocketing. So you see some of the locations there at 3 minutes past the hour with Golden Gate, Vineyards at 5 minutes past the hour, and then 6 minutes near Lily Resort. So these are the locations. Again, take cover. That would be just like having, you can get hurricane force winds immediately when you have a tornado spin up inside one of these outer bands.
And this tornado warning does go for another 7 minutes. Again, the location going to be inland Collier County, just north of Alligator Alley, just south of the Hendry County line. If you know anyone trying to evacuate over to the East Coast, driving in this direction right now, might want to give them a heads up, as well as following along on our Fox 4 Now app, as well as fox4now.com. You can download the Storm Shield app. That will actually give you an automatic alert based on your GPS location and send an alert to your phone of exactly what's going on. I've seen the hurricane warnings, I've seen hurricane watches, storm surge warnings, all to my phone within the past day or two, and that's for your location, and that is going to be an incredible resource for you as we head into the next couple of days to make sure you know exactly what's happening in your location. If you were on Alligator Alley in this area right now, you would have gotten that alert right to your phone saying tornado warning, take shelter.
And it is likely to cross Alligator Alley here as we get, again, it's not a due east-west, it's more of a slightly northeast to southwest. And so as we go a little further to the west here, as you can see, east of Naples, this storm system is likely to cross Alligator Alley here. Watch the motion there. You see it just about now in that location. There were some other locations that were up there in the screen. Hopefully you got a chance to see those places to take cover. Orange Tree, maybe just north of the storm system, or at least certainly close by. And this is, again, just the outer bands. And that's usually where you're seeing these tornadoes, is in the outer bands, which makes it, you have this false sense of security thinking, okay, well, the eye is so far away.
Right. The worst of it's not here yet.
It's not even here yet. But then these outer bands come in and the weather's fine, then all of a sudden the sky's dark, and this is what can happen.
And they move so quickly. As you see, 28 miles per hour is how quickly this storm cell is moving right now. So it moves in quick, and unfortunately quicker than a lot of people can prepare. And that's why Governor Scott just said, if you're evacuating, do so before noon, because there's more of this on the way. This is just the beginning. And unfortunately, conditions only going downhill from here. We'll see plenty more tornado warnings over the course of today. And then, of course, as those tropical storm force winds arrive, then it's sustained through Sunday, Monday.
And so everything will be increasing. We'll start hearing a lot about what's happening in Miami, and the Everglades will just be inundated. I remember going in through the Everglades years after Andrew, and in talking to the people down there, saying it just hadn't really recovered yet entirely. Right. It was a very difficult situation, and it is going to be very similar here. Water will just absolutely be pushing the furthest north here because of such the low elevation down here. A lot of wetlands, but we're going to push that in much further as well. So.
Looks like this storm cell is headed toward Miles City right now. If you're in the area, know that there's a very strong storm cell headed your way just south of Sunnyland. Again, the tornado warning is right in between the southernmost portion of Hendry County and Alligator Alley. That tornado warning until 10:15 this morning, about 5 more minutes, with that strong thunderstorm cell with hail headed right toward Miles City.
Yeah, so Miles City isn't in the tornado warning right now, but the National Weather Service is evaluating the situation and looking at this system to make sure it's to see if we still have the rotation and the radar indication of that tornado. If so, they may extend that warning towards Miles City. So if you're in Miles City, you want to prepare like you're about to have the chance to have a tornado to come through. Otherwise, we'll just get a real strong thunderstorm out of this. But better to be safe than sorry. And again, it will be crossing west of Miles City. We're likely to see. You can see that precipitation intensity, 1 3/4 inches per hour. That is just the beginning of what's to come.
Right. Plenty more on the way over the next couple of days. This is just the start. And it looks like that tornado warning has expired. We will keep tracking, of course, this thunderstorm cell, seeing if they're issuing a tornado warning near Miles City as the thunderstorm cell inches closer, but it looks like right now that tornado warning has been expired.
And lots more showers and storms down to the south. You see the general motion going from east to west. Again, that east-west or slightly northeast to southwest. Some showers coming in over Lake Okeechobee as well. Could push into the Fort Myers area a little bit later on here this morning. Of course, the main portion of the storm, the eye, is barely coming off the coast of Cuba right now. Right. And so, again, we talk about the extra warm water down there. There's not a lot of wind shear in the upper atmosphere. So as the system, you see the eye, notice how the eye kind of just fills right in, because that's a good weakening sign right there. It's not the best of news for Cuba, but hopefully that weakening will possibly get us just a little bit less of intensity when it comes in. But just remember one thing to leave you with here is that a Category 5 storm is 500 times stronger than a Category 1 storm. The 4 is 250 times. So between a Category 4 and 5, it's an extra 250 times stronger as far as the power, the force of the wind, because it's what we call logarithmic, and it's every little bit will help.
And that's kind of the reality of the situation as we head into the rest of your Saturday, into your Sunday. This is what's headed our direction, and this is what we've been encouraging you to prepare for here on Fox 4. So, of course, we're staying with you every step of the way. We're here to answer any questions that you have and hopefully make sure you are best prepared as Irma continues to track closer to the peninsula. Again, timing, we will see those tropical storm force winds as we head into later this evening. Hurricane conditions expected to arrive early tomorrow. So hopefully those that are evacuating do so as soon as possible.
All right, Danny and Scott,
All right.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott, for joining us.
Absolutely.
Too.
Rely on you both to track this for us. We're working on a number of different things, obviously covering this story from all different angles. It's really been amazing today, this morning even, how many shelters, new shelters we've seen open up, then just to be filled to capacity. It's going on in Collier County, also happening in Charlotte County as well. We just got word that Kingsway Elementary School is at full capacity, as is Liberty Elementary School. There are other shelters open right now if you need to go to those shelters. A couple of interesting things I'm catching online here. A couple of interesting stats. We've been talking about the power. Power officials are telling us that we are going to see massive power outages with this storm. We're already seeing a little bit of that right now. This comes from the Miami-Dade County. Nearly 22,000 customers already without power there. They're seeing some strong winds there. We just heard Scott and Danny talking about that. So 22,000 customers without power. Of course, that number is going up. And I want to read you a tweet from Marco Island PD that is really striking. Now, they've had a mandatory evacuation order there for a number of hours now, but this is a tweet they just sent out. It says the city of Marco Island is under a mandatory evacuation order. Evacuate immediately, evacuate immediately. So that order has been in place, but the urgency is there right now, and it could not be any more clear. Yeah,
it's not a matter of, would you survive some of those structures built on Marco Island that are elevated, more modern? It's getting across the bridge. What happened, or not the bridge, but just that the local highway back into Naples that could potentially be knocked out. Services, emergency personnel responding to Marco Island in case that is necessary. That's not going to be possible. So they need you to leave Marco Island now. I want to mention a new shelter that has opened up in LaBelle. It is in Hendry County. They just opened up the Grove Elementary School for additional shelter. That will begin, and actually just opened up about 15 minutes ago, although there are probably lines waiting to fill out the paperwork before you get in.
And one thing we haven't talked about all morning long is the area near Lake Okeechobee. Now, according to the governor, the Army Corps of Engineers has told him that they believe that the Herbert Hoover Dike will withstand these hurricane force winds. However, the concern is with all those winds, it will blow some of the water around it onto the neighboring communities. So we do know about some evacuations in that area. South Bay, Lake Harbor, Pahokee, Moorhaven, Clewiston, Belglade, and Canal Point, all mandatory evacuations there.
Right. There was a flood warning, too, that was issued for Peace River in Arcadia. That will be more than likely to happen for the Peace River at Arcadia, Horse Creek near Arcadia from Sunday evening, and that is until further notice. That is a flood warning.
All right, so many things. We are on top of it all. We're going to get you this information as soon as we get it to make sure you have the very latest information for you and your family. But we want to take a second and go out live to Tony Russell, who is in Naples on Vanderbilt Beach. I think, Tony, you're still there. Are you seeing the conditions get any different, any worse right now?
Well, we're watching for that. We know that circulation feature is off to our far end here, so we're still obstructed by a lot of the palm trees and the high of those condominiums. John Ruggiero, you are here out at Vanderbilt Beach with us. Could you walk me through just kind of how you're preparing and why you're choosing to stay?
I've been through a lot of hurricanes. I'm from Charleston. I just got here about 30 days ago. But food, water, very important. Board up your windows. Just make sure you have a plan to escape if things really go bad. And I think I'm ready.
What made you want to come out to the beach? Obviously, no brainer to see how the surf is.
Exactly. Rode my bike all the way here just to look at the water for the last time. Yeah.
That seems to be the theme. A lot of people know that the beach is the last place you need to be right now, and that there's mandatory evacuations, and it is a life-threatening situation. But a lot of people they just need to confirm what's going to be left,
right,
exactly. the before and after.
Exactly. I want to see what it is now and what it is after.
How are you prepared? You and it sounds like folks where you live are kind of, you guys are all talking to each other.
Yes, we are. My neighbor's been through this for 40 years, and he's got a sense of when to leave and when not to leave. Yeah. He hasn't left yet. It's in 40 years.
You've been watching this from afar. People have been warning weeks ahead. You've seen this thing spinning in the Atlantic, and now it's on our doorstep. How do you feel right now?
I'm a little hesitant that I'm staying, but I got confidence that things will be fine.
Okay, John, thanks for joining us and speaking with us and
Thank
hanging
you.
with us. That's the sentiment from the majority of the people out here. They're checking things out. They're making sure that the boat is still here. Again, Vanderbilt Beach, still a place where people are getting their last looks before Irma makes landfall. Reporting live in Naples, Tony Russell, Fox 4 in your corner.
Thank you very much. Where Tony is in Collier County, a lot of things happening right now. A lot of people in need of shelters, a lot of evacuation orders. In fact, those evacuation orders have grown this morning in Collier County. We're seeing some evacuation centers open and then be filled to capacity within an hour.
Yeah, almost as soon as they open, they fill up in about, like you said, an hour. So, and if they do turn you away, they're not turning you away. They'd like to fill as many people as they can and accommodate as many people as they can. It's just that shelter is now to capacity, so they're going to send you to another shelter. So they're opening, as soon as they open a shelter, we're going to let you know about it. Sam Sosa is now at a Collier County shelter. Sam, where are you and what are you seeing?
Hey guys, I'm at Golden Terrace Elementary Intermediate right now. This shelter opened up at 9, and as you can see, the line is getting pretty long already. You see people here with their families, babies, pets, people really packing up, suitcases to come here, pillows, stuff to stay overnight. This shelter also is accepting pets. We're seeing a couple. We have these 2 really cute dogs here. I'm gonna get over and talk to this lady here. Hey, how are you doing? You said you had some concerns about the pets, but it was cleared up, correct?
It was, and these guys are 13 now, and anybody that has pets knows that it's just like a child. So we're really very grateful that they're taking animals here.
Are you guys ready, you think, to stay here for a couple of days? What kind of things did you bring?
Everything. We brought all their vaccinations. We have a pet cage. We have food for them and water for them. Our needs are secondary, but we have, and we tried to pack light because we were considerate of other people too, that, everybody needs to be comfortable as they can.
All right, thank you so much. God bless you guys. So we're here with so many people in line right now. Just to keep in mind some things, let me step out of the way so these people can get through. Some things you might want to keep in mind to bring are your medications, definitely, cell phone chargers, toiletries, food, water, flashlights, bedding, anything else. You need to be comfortable. If you guys have young children, you might want some silent toys for them. And, if you have a baby, definitely baby formula, that kind of stuff. We're going to keep watching this situation here and let you guys know when it closes or when lines do start closing. But this one seems to be fine and under control. Still plenty of room, it appears. One thing we also wanted to mention is that if you bring a pet, you need to bring their kennels and papers. We see one gentleman here bringing the kennel right now. You're going to need to bring a kennel for your pets, and you're going to need to make sure someone is watching them at all times. You can't just leave the pet alone in the shelter, in the kennel. A family member has to be watching them at all times. Let's see if we can talk to a couple other people here who are ready to take shelter and, bunker down. Do any of you guys mind talking to us real quick about bunkering down? What kind of things you brought? Long line, as you can see. Hey, do you guys mind sharing with us what you brought with you to the shelter today to, stay for a couple of days, I'm sure?
I guess basic stuff, like, I don't know, clothes, just a few of them, and a lot of water, and maybe some food. Just the basic, and maybe some important documents, too. That's it.
Definitely something you want to keep with you. What are you guys thinking at this time? What's going through your mind with the situation?
We're kind of disappointed. We were in the other shelter, and they give us the handrest, and we were not supposed to. I was 5 hours yesterday in a line, and now I'm here another 2 hours for another line. It's not fair. But it's okay. Everybody's scared, and I completely understand.
How long have you been waiting in this line here?
We've been for, I don't know, like an hour, maybe? No.
It opened at 9, correct?
Yeah, I don't know. They just sent it from the other shelter from here.
Okay, closer to the front, I see, so that's good.
Yeah, I guess it's going to be faster than yesterday.
Okay, great. All right, so we've been talking to a couple people here. As you can see, some people frustrated. They've been waiting hours at other shelters to be rerouted over here to new shelters. Let me tell you guys a couple of shelters that have opened up as of 9 a.m. We have this one, which is Golden Terrace Elementary Intermediate. There's Golden Gate Elementary Intermediate, Golden Gate Middle, Lake Trafford Elementary, and Pinecrest Elementary. That one's in Immokalee. All those open at 9 a.m. So there should be some more room here, and they're also going to keep opening shelters throughout the day. We're going to bring those updates to you guys. For now, I'm in Naples. Sam Sosa, Fox 4, in your corner.
Other shelters are beginning to open and close very quickly, but we will keep our website updated for the latest closures as well. And they'll give you the address, because I know a lot of folks are here on their second home or just moved here, and you don't know exactly where Golden Gate Elementary is. So all of that information is posted to our website. Our digital team is on top of things, keeping everything updated as soon as the information comes in. We put it out on the website, fox4now.com.
All right, we were tracking that tornado warning that covered part of Collier County. So let's bring Danny and Scott back in. I guess that has expired now. But as you were saying, the conditions will likely introduce more of these kinds of things.
Right. The northeast quadrant of any hurricane is going to bring in that tornado risk, and we've seen that now with two, one in Monroe County and one in Collier. And really, for the rest of the morning, Collier County going to be a place to watch for those tornado warnings.
And they're quick. They come and they go very rapidly.
Taking a look right now at, okay, so we're going to go over some of the factors of a hurricane, some of the, I should say, threats of a hurricane that impact, we're seeing the most severe impacts of any hurricane. So which part of a hurricane is the worst, Scott? So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so you're looking at the storm system here. There's the direction, okay? And so on the right-hand side of the storm is the worst. In the eye, the wind is calm. There's that right front quadrant that we're talking about, the maximum hurricane impact, where the forward speed of the hurricane is combined with the wind direction as well coming around it. And, of course, it's the right side of the hurricane as well that you can get tornadoes. So on the left side, the front left, we see the significant storm surge. Wherever the force of the wind is around that eye wall, and it's that donut around the eye wall. So the closer you get to the center, the winds are increasing. So you can have winds gusting to 170 miles an hour, and then in the middle, that eye comes over and it goes to almost calm in moments, just moments, and then it's back to the other direction, and it's the other direction which takes trees that have been bent in one direction back off. So you see that back right significant wind. That wind that comes in from the opposite direction can create a lot of damage because everything's been leaning in one direction.
And the back left is considered the weakest portion of any hurricane. And that's why our threats have increased so much over the past 2 days, because the trend keeps shifting further west and further west. So as of 2-3 days ago, we were on that on the left side, but on the better side of the hurricane. Now we're looking at the eye sliding up the west coast of Florida, which puts us on the east side of the storm, which has the most severe impacts and the more severe threats.
So there you see 2 a.m. on Sunday. If we hold it there, wind 150 miles per hour. That's again around the donut of the eye wall there. Hurricane force wind showing up, I believe, in the red area. So that's hurricane force winds approaching again up past Bonita Beach, Naples, well under inside this swath. And this is the trend has been left. And if it shifts just left a little bit more, it will be. It just doesn't get much as far as the track goes as a worst case scenario. But now we're dealing with a massive storm. Look at the size of the tropical storm force winds in yellow, encompassing the entire state. The entire state of Florida being impacted, not just a little, either with major damage or in some places catastrophic damage.
Right. The tropical storm force wind field extends 195 miles outside of the center. And so then you double that, right? So we're looking at just under 400 miles across, I should say, in terms of the tropical storm force wind field. The hurricane force winds, that's going to be 70 miles from the center, which puts it at 140 miles across, which is the Florida Peninsula.
And there you see the pointing. When you look at the probability, that shows you the track, and you see what's exactly in line with that track. It's Fort Myers to just to the east of Tampa. And you see how it kind of slackens, of course, through time. The probability is less and less through time, but that's the direction it's headed. And we saw those tropical storm force winds in yellow, that wind field shrinking as it came inland, of course, from the weakening of coming over. But it's going to be the weakening from going over southwest Florida.
Right. There's not a whole lot to weaken it until it arrives to us. The Cuba is doing the best job right now that anyone's going to do, and unfortunately, as it heads back over the warm waters, it could re-strengthen before approaching landfall here in southwest Florida.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about Key West. This eye is going to come right over. I've been to Key West before, and it is just, we saw what Barbuda looked like.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, of course, I think a little better construction of buildings in Key West, but there's going to be just some massive damage down to Key West if the track of this storm continues with the eye passing right over it. And again, the rest of the Keys up to the north, almost as bad. We're talking storm surges coming higher than most of the islands.
And Key West issued those evacuation orders days ago. And in fact, the National Weather Service out of Key West issued one of, I think, the most gut-wrenching tweets I've ever read about the impacts that they're looking at. They were saying, we need to leave. This is I wish I could pull up the exact tweet because it really did paint the kind of serious picture that we're looking at. For Key West, impacts are going to be devastating. And unfortunately, between Key West and us, there's not much of a chance for weakening.
I think I heard the governor say it would be very difficult to survive a hurricane that comes right over the Keys, this hurricane coming right over the Keys. And I think the timing was that for 1 o'clock yesterday, that if you didn't take that last bus or train, bus out, that was it. You had to do it on your own, and then eventually now we're just hoping that everybody is gone. So there we go with the latest wind gusts here already in Miami. You can see some of those gusts, and now the future cast here. This is now 9 o'clock tonight. Tropical storm force winds already passing past Naples here at 44 miles an hour, and then approaching the Fort Myers area at 10 o'clock in the evening. And Danny, these are some big numbers here.
And unfortunately, you can see the numbers getting bigger as we head into tomorrow morning. And that's why it's important for those that are evacuating to get where they need to be by this afternoon, because as soon as those tropical storm force winds approach, that's when you can no longer be on the roadways. It's unsafe to drive. And we're seeing those arrive as early as this evening, with the hurricane conditions arriving as we head toward tomorrow morning. And so this is tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. You see the 104-mile-per-hour wind gust in Naples, and that's what we're going to see through Lee County potentially as well.
Yeah, and right along the coast, there's no friction with that wind coming over the water. So along the coast, it is a steady, howling, roaring wind, and then as the wind starts to move inland just a little bit, it starts to roll as the friction hits it, so you get more gusts. So you get gustier wind pushing on in, not as strong. The wind actually starts to lift up, and as you mentioned earlier, high rises, you start to go up in the buildings, and you start to increase a category or two as far as the wind, the current wind that you're experiencing. And so along the coast, there's going to be some massive devastation here across southwest Florida. And you're on your own.
Right.
Basically, they don't even want you to call 911 if it's a life-threatening situation, yes, but they're going to have a really difficult time rescuing people during the storm system.
And that's why it's important to obey those evacuation orders, and that's why it's irresponsible for those who are in that evacuation zone to just decide that, no, I'm going to ride this one out, because you're not just putting your life at risk, but if you call 911 and try to get one of those teams out to help you when you're inevitably stuck, you're putting other lives at risk as well. So it's important to be responsible both for you and your friends and neighbors that would potentially have to help in the situation.
So we're not going to see the rain totals that they saw in Houston out of this storm system, because it is moving rather steadily, which is good. But we are seeing some significant rain as we put this in motion. Look down Marathon Key, over 17 inches. So that is significant rain. And even over a foot in Naples, just under that in the Fort Myers area. Here we are now up to 11 inches as we go through these rain totals. So the totals have increased. The rain from the past tracks that we talked about.
Yes.
And that's from that track pushing to the west,
further west,
drawing more of that moisture up from the tropics.
And this is our on top of already saturated ground through southwest Florida. We are in that season where thunderstorms happen each evening. We had that significant rain event last week, 2 weekends ago, where we did see flooding across the area. We're finally starting to recover from that, and we're going to see, as that map just showed, another 10 to potentially 15 inches over the next couple of days, and that is going to cause flooding issues on top of the storm surge issues. So water inundation is something that we can count on moving into the next couple of days.
So these are the outer bands we're watching on the Doppler radar here. North Key Largo just about to get hit with a a good-sized storm here, likely to get some wind gusts, some of their highest wind gusts yet, coming up about the next 15 minutes or so. This is just south of Miami. As you see the top of the Keys as we circle that region there for you. There was one band pushing through, and there it is right there. That's one of those outer bands coming in, and it will just, each band will just get stronger and stronger as this system pushes to the north. Remember, the center is still along the coast of Cuba. That's 90 miles away from South Florida, and here we are with these outer bands stretching up to the north like this.
So this is just the beginning, and that's another thing to remember. We're already seeing dangerous weather with the tornado warnings and that extremely heavy rain. Again, we saw the rain rates of about 1.25 inches already with these outer bands, and it's just going to get stronger as that eye does approach the Florida Peninsula. You can see that, you can visually see the weakening as that eye hugs the northern coast of Cuba, but don't expect it to stay necessarily weak. There is the probability, or the possibility, I should say, of re-strengthening. Right now, still forecast to be a Category 4 upon approaching the Florida Peninsula, but we could see winds back up to about 150 rather than the 130 that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, and that's the next few hours here are going to be critical. The National Weather Service is going to watch this very closely. In fact, you see here the Weather Service in Key West saying this is as real as it gets. This
is the tweet that I was referring to that I saw yesterday. This is as real as it gets. Nowhere in the Florida Keys will be safe. You still have time to evacuate. It's not very often that National Weather Service offices use this kind of language. This is pretty much as cut and dry as you can make it. The Florida Keys, this is not a survivable event, as you mentioned, Scott. That's what Governor Scott said. It's not a survivable event for those on the Florida Keys, and you can see that the National Weather Service in that region is reflecting that. It's as real as it gets. This is it. This is that once-in-a-lifetime and storm, and the kind of storm you don't get in your lifetime.
Yeah, the last time I saw a statement like this, it was for Katrina, and it was a long-winded statement that was as dramatic as that. And they're doing this to catch your attention, to say we're not messing around here. Because you can say, okay, this is a hurricane. I've been through another hurricane. But when you deal with different stages, different categories of hurricanes, it gets a lot different. Take a look at this storm surge potential. You see all that red there? 9 feet or above, pushing well inland from Marco Island, and you see all those evacuations west of 41. That's a lot of people.
And that storm surge potential really goes up to about Alligator Alley. That's Alligator Alley, remember, takes that turn right at Naples. So we're even seeing the potential for around a foot of storm surge potential up to Alligator Alley, that far inland. And, of course, south, because of just the strength of Irma as it continues its track up north.
Yeah, so the storm surge, you see the curvature of the terrain, or I should say of the coastline there. You can see water getting funneled in. You don't see as big of a storm surge showing up at Sanibel, but one of the biggest problems with Sanibel is you have that wind coming straight off the water, and the wind damage will be catastrophic on Sanibel. Captiva, the South Seas Resort, was just completely wiped out from the last big hurricane that we had. So, again, we're going to keep a close eye on this.
You all have been watching the forecast track just like we have, and you have a lot of the same information. Just to repeat this morning, this storm is unprecedented. As the governor says, what's most important is saving lives. There's going to be a lot of property damage in Lee County when this thing is over. So life safety is the most important issue for today and the next couple of days. In just a moment, Lee Mayfield is going to give you a briefing on the latest forecast track, along with some of our new shelter openings and some more evacuation that we're announcing, or I think we've already pushed out to you. Our Lee Train buses, we have, we're operating today, and we'll continue to operate until we reach about 30 miles an hour sustained. So people who need to get to shelters, that's one of the reasons that we're running right now. But when those shelters are open, we'd recommend people get there early. Earlier the better, because they're going to fill up. And if every person in the evacuation zones wanted to go to a shelter, there simply won't be enough capacity. So the sheriff's going to talk about some of that in just a minute, I think. But the message from Lee County today is we are as ready as can be. Those things that are in our control, we have control of. I briefed this morning with the fire districts. They are in a great state of readiness. They have double shifts on right now. Given the new flood information, tidal surge information, they themselves are worried about losing some stations to the storm in those flood zones, and so we'll be working with them afterwards to find temporary quarters. They are ready to call for urban search and rescue if the need arises following the passing of the storm. But the rule of thumb is we're going to be on our own for about 3 days. The governor is doing a great job. I've never seen a governor behave like Rick Scott in one of these events. But this storm is going to affect the entire state. And resources are going to be in short supply, so it's going to be important that people are calm and patient and help each other. If with this storm coming, if people are out of the flood zone, if they've got their homes shuttered, it's probably best to stay at home in place if they're feeling safe. If not, make their way to the shelters as we get them open today. Lee.
Thank you, Lee Mayfield, Lee County Emergency Management. As the county manager said, this is absolutely an unprecedented event for Southwest Florida, once in a lifetime event, if that. So I think the time to prepare, is slowly coming to a close, but there is still time. We expect the arrival of those tropical storm force winds later into tonight, into tomorrow morning. It'll be rainy, a little bit breezy out there today, but there is still time. Based on the updated storm surge information that we got, we are calling for additional evacuations of Zone B south of the Caloosahatchee River. So that's that orange area on your map south of the Caloosahatchee River. And evacuation of Zone B in Cape Coral south of Pine Island Road. South of Pine Island Road in Cape Coral. Again, those orange areas. We'll make sure to push out good mapping to everyone so you can display that to the public. So, again, a significant event that we're dealing with right now. Want to make sure the public rushes their preparedness actions to completion today. One key point on the storm surge. The storm surge threat is worse after the winds start. The storm has to almost get close to us and pass us before those onshore winds can start spinning and pushing water inland. So don't want the public to be complacent if that storm surge threat comes a little bit later. And again, that significant increase in storm surge is the reason for those additional evacuations. So again, still time to prepare. We have shelters open. Some, of course, have filled up, but we're working hard to open more. Germain Arena this morning, Ray Pottorff this morning. We have a number of shelters that we're going to be announcing later today as well. Still capacity at those shelters, so again, plenty of time to get there throughout the day today, but that time is running short. So those folks in our mandatory evacuation areas, we ask you to rush those preparedness actions to completion. We have a phrase in our business, run from the water, hide from the wind. And again, just leaving those evacuation areas due to that storm surge threat is very important to the public right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Lee County Sheriff Mike Scott. I want to dovetail on what the county manager mentioned regarding Lee Tran. The sheriff's office this morning, and then of course we're welcome to take the calls, but many of the calls have to deal with wanting us to transport people and their pets and families to the shelters. We would ask the public's help in helping them to bear in mind their nearest bus stop. Lee Tran, again, will continue to pick up and take these folks to the shelters, including their pets. And so, again, happy to take the calls. We're not trying to discourage anyone from calling our office for any reason. However, bear some of these things in mind. Also, with regard to shelter locations, I've personally taken some calls on this morning. Those are posted and updated, of course, on the EOC website, as well as the Lee County Sheriff's Office website. I spoke yesterday briefly about the Florida Sheriff's statewide task force, and I want to repeat that in a way and hopefully maybe better explain what I meant. In most cases, most incidents, whether it be a hurricane or any type of a traumatic event, it's a little more isolated than this is expected to be. It's more contained to the north, south, east, west, or central situations where those surrounding resources, i.e. manpower from sheriff's offices and assets, more importantly, boats, buggies, all types of assets, can be brought to bear on that particular issue. Because of what's happening right now with the approach of Irma, beyond the fact that it's an unprecedented storm, is the fact that we've never really been splintered in our statewide task force. And so I just want to reemphasize that we will anticipate help from many sheriff's offices throughout the state if they're spared any appreciable or significant damage. I anticipate the question on curfews, and so I'll maybe preempt that. That came up yesterday. That's something that, of course, we will continue to monitor with county management and emergency management, as well as we want to be unified with our city partners. And so we would rather have one specific catch-all, whether that's at dusk to dawn or whatever that may be, and that's more likely to occur, so you know, after the storm surge that Lee mentioned. After the calm, we want to encourage people, please don't rush into the streets with a false sense of security. There will be a little bit of a calm before those winds whip the water back on shore, and we want folks to remain vigilant of that. Of course, we talked about the shelters and the task force. I want to also mention that we're fortunate in one regard, being a coastal community and expecting these high surges, that there are a lot of folks out there, civilians with small vessels, small flat bottom type boats, canoes, kayaks, these types of things. Try to tie those to a tree or a fence that don't get away from you, because those are going to become helpful for us to partner with our civilian friends in the community, perhaps for some of these shallow water vessels. We have quite a few of those, and the FWC state has mobilized here locally with some small flat type shallow water vessels, but that's going to potentially be a problem depending on how long the surge stays up. I think beyond that, one other thing I wanted to mention, Lieutenant Drizmala brought this up the other day, but I haven't heard it in the last couple of days. If and when power goes out, and obviously we anticipate that, whether it's intentional or as an act of Irma, the intersection, of course, will either go into a flash mode or probably dead altogether. And dead altogether or flash mode, either way, if they're not functioning at full capacity, each intersection is to be treated, no matter how large or small it is, as a four-way stop. And so we would ask motorists, probably some time before motorists are back on the roads, but as roads do become passable, and if and when somehow that's sooner rather than later, whenever it occurs, we want to make sure that folks keep that in mind. Lieutenant Drizmala, thanks again for mentioning that. I think with that, Commissioner Manning, did you have it? Commissioner Manning is here with us. Again, we've had so much support from the state and the county. The Sheriff's Office is prepared. The Undersheriff and I remain committed for our team. Let me preempt one other thing that goes to curfew. They kind of hand in hand. Looters, again, came up yesterday. I hope it goes without saying that the Lee County Sheriff's Office and Fort Myers PD and others in law enforcement are very aware of the fact that there are opportunists, there are thieves. Let's face it, they're out there in good conditions. They're going to prey on people at their most vulnerable time. And that is perhaps when my anger level and our focus and attention is elevated. We will make examples of the first few that try it, and hopefully that will be a notice and serve notice to others who may want to try to do something like that. So it's not an idle threat. It's a guaranteed promise that those who go out and try to create havoc upon this disaster are going to be dealt with in swift and sure fashion, and I can assure you of that. I'll sort of step back. Roger, do you have something?
Yeah, just
go ahead, and then we'll take questions in a free flow.
Just a reminder, we have pre-staged heavy equipment. Our first order of business following the passing of the storm is to open the roads so that public safety officials, law enforcement, fire rescue, and ambulances can be on the roads and working. We will, of course, be clearing the primary roads first, the arterials, Cleveland Avenue, Del Prado Boulevard, Pine Island Road, all those major roads is roads that eventually make their way to the hospitals, and other healthcare facilities, and so we're prepared to do that. Secondly, just a reminder that trash pickup has been suspended as of today, and will resume whenever we can following the storm's passing. When the roads are cleared, we will be working hard to remove trash. You may know, for those who have worked storms before, one of the largest issues that any county has to deal with following the storm, once you get past life safety, search and rescue, is debris removal and what to do with it. You can fill multiple football fields, 30 feet high, with vegetative debris following one of these storms. We'll see what that looks like, but we have a number of those sites already designated and approved by the EPA. And so, just know that, again, Lee County is as prepared as it can be for all those things that are within our control. So if you have any questions?
Sure. A follow-up to the looting. If a citizen sees something that isn't right, somebody going into a home, or what should they do?
call us. Sure, if it's imminent, 911. Now, we anticipate that our 911 lines, again, depending on what's going on, you know, in a day-to-day scenario where everything is, weather is optimal, we still have cardiac events, health issues that present, and so 911, of course, is to be reserved for immediate emergency, which, by the way, could be a burglary in progress or something along those lines. So we always want the public's help. We want them to help us, you know, be the eyes and ears, and they know what's right and wrong in their communities and what belongs and what doesn't. And so as they're coming or going, Shear, I don't want to imply at all that we're trying to discourage calls to the Sheriff's Office. Just want them to be mindful of things like transportation with lead train and stuff. As far as that goes, I don't, based on, and we've not had anything quite to this magnitude, of course, but based on prior experiences, the incidents have been limited, and we found that with tactical teams that we deploy specifically for what we're talking about now, that tends to get word out and discourage, and so we'll, to an extent, deal with that if and when it presents, but we are prepared for that.
I also want to point out just a couple of increase in this news conference that really stood out to me. The emergency management director said, we'll basically, referring to Lee County, we'll basically be on our own for 3 days. I don't think that's meant to scare anybody or overhype this event, but just a reality check as to how dangerous this storm is and how many resources are going to be taken statewide that after this storm hits, as he said, we may be on our own for a few days. We may not get any help from outside of our community. That's how bad this is. That's how the potential for flooding and washing out of roads and other things are.
And that is without power, without any resources. We hope and pray you have your preparations, your food for days with you, because you're going to need it. This is big. This is the time. Zone B, by the way, you said it was significant. It is huge in Cape Coral. That is west of Chiquita, south of Pine Island Road, because of the storm surge threat. That is a big zone. That is a big zone, and that's probably also why emergency management said there is not enough shelter space for everyone who is under this mandatory evacuation order. You now have Zone A and Zone B in Lee County, specifically there in Cape Coral. So let's get to Sam Sosa, 4 in Your Corner. Sam Sosa is at a shelter. She's down in Collier County. And Sam, I know the shelters there have been filling up very quickly today. What are you saying? Where are you?
Guys, that's right. Shelters are just packed right now. You could see behind me in this line, they are slowly letting people in. People were getting frustrated at a time because they didn't know if they were going to be able to get in or out. They said that they were assessing how much space they had, but right now it appears they are starting to slowly let people trickle in. This is at Golden Terrace Elementary Intermediate in Naples. You see people have packed their bags. They have children with them. They have all these supplies. If you take a look over here, bedding, suitcases, everything they're going to need to survive for at least a couple of days. And this just shows you, this line shows you how great the need for shelter in Naples is right now. It doesn't matter what kind of structure you live in, what kind of neighborhood you live in. People just want to get into a safe shelter, and they're waiting long lines and then being rerouted to other shelters as they fill up. This one just opened up at 9 a.m. today. Oh, it's getting a little windy here, starting to thunder. This one opened up just at 9 a.m. today, and it's already, very packed. They're slowly letting people in, as we said. We'll let you guys know when this shelter is at capacity, but now I want to give you a list of other shelters that also open at 9 a.m. So if you are looking for a shelter, you may have better luck with these since they opened just a short while ago. There's this one, Golden Terrace Elementary Intermediate. There's Golden Gate Elementary Intermediate, Golden Gate Middle, Lake Trafford Elementary, and Pinecrest Elementary. All of those opened at 9. So if you've been trying to get into shelters, keep getting rerouted. Those opened just about an hour ago, so you may have better luck there. And again, supplies to bring. I know you guys have been hearing it over and over. Inglewood community? Yeah. Okay.
All right. We
Thank you, Sam.
There, yeah.
That's okay. We are back here, and wanted to also announce, if you didn't hear me here earlier, Inglewood Community Hospital is beginning to evacuate all patients today.
Yeah, as we've been saying all morning, long. So many things going on. We are working very hard to get it all to you as soon as we get it. If you miss anything, you can always go to fox4now.com. If the power goes out, which it is expected to do at some point over the next 24 hours or so, we will be streaming our newscast so you can get all this information. If you have a mobile device, a phone or whatnot, you can get on to fox4now.com. We will be streaming this newscast so you can have all that information all throughout this storm.
Also starting at noon today, we are going to live stream on 95.3. That's one of our iHeart sister station on the radio, WOLZ. And then at some point, we'll likely be streamed on all of our iHeart sister stations on the radio. So we'll let you know about that when that time comes.
It's just another way we are in your corner throughout this whole process, before, during, and after Hurricane Irma. Are we going to, okay, we are going to Danny and Scott now for the very latest on where this storm stands.
Well, the very latest that I just found out is where I live, the evacuation zone B in Lee County has officially been evacuated. Yeah. So this is, you know, luckily I'm safe here at the station getting taken care of. But for any of my neighbors at home, this is to the point where heading to those shelters is something that you need to do. Because as you can see, the impacts from Irma already starting this morning. The center just about 272 miles away from Naples at this point, with those rain bands already arriving to Collier County. Yeah, you can see the outer bands coming in. We just heard there was thunder there in Collier County. Some of the storms pushing on through, more rain bands moving in. If we focus in on the center, and maybe we can zoom on into the center of the storm system down in Cuba, you can still see a circulation. Basically, there's still an eye wall. You don't see the rain in the middle of the storm system here. The cloud cover, when it goes over land, may cover in, but notice how you still see that nice donut there. That's still the size of a well-defined storm, and that dark green with the yellow in it, that's the eye wall there. Very fierce wind. That's where the strongest wind is. So that is the region, and in the cloud cover, it's called essential dense overcast. There's the eye being pointed out right there in the last frame, but it is over the edge, just scraping the north coast of Cuba, likely causing some massive devastation to Cuba right now. And now it's going to start to take a northward turn, start to turn a little more to the north. You see Key West on the upper left-hand side. That's where the storm system is then expected to loop through and turn to the north. And Danny, anytime we've got a storm, of course, that's turning like this, you wonder, is it going to turn? Is it going to make the turn at that time? Is it going to follow the computer forecast model? Well, here is that computer forecast model. And it's shifted west. The past, I would say day of updates, we keep seeing the trend shifting further and further west. And the latest update, we're looking still 130 mile per hour winds with that turn happening as we head into the rest of today. This means that for Southwest Florida, we are looking at a Category 4 potentially making landfall. That's what we see in Key West as well, expected to happen Sunday around 2 a.m. on Key West. For us, we're looking Sunday 2 p.m. potentially with the core of Irma approaching landfall. We're looking at 150 mile per hour winds is the forecast right now. So again, the strongest impact is going to be tomorrow afternoon, and then Irma will continue its track up further north. But since it's continuing to shift further west and west, what we're seeing is not weakening as quickly as Irma continues its track north, which means impacts will be stronger for longer. And that's because it's not interacting with land as quick as some of those updates were the past couple of days, which means conditions are going to continue to be very, very dangerous, even as Irma tracks through Charlotte County and then up into the Tampa area. As you can see, 130 mile per hour winds now, but the National Hurricane Center forecasting 150 miles per hour when it comes in as it does strengthen a bit. And then you see it go right over Tampa or just on the right to the east side of Tampa and then start to curve to the west a little bit. It'll actually be a big rainfall maker. It's likely to stall out in the southeast U.S. You see the tropical storm force winds just shrinking away here, but there'll be a lot of rain. Anytime you see a system curving the opposite way of typical weather goes, it means it's eventually going to stall on out, and that will be the case. So we'll be dealing with a rainmaker in the rest of the southeast. But here in South Florida, it is wind, it is storm surge, and it is rain. And there are the latest wind gusts that we're seeing now. Key West, 40 miles per hour. Already at that tropical storm force. And the timeline here is really important because with the new evacuations issued, again, that B zone through Lee County, that means more people are going to start evacuating. And we need to head to where you're going as soon as possible because being out on the roadways, driving, I should say, is dangerous when you get into the tropical storm force winds. And on your wind forecast, you see Saturday, 9 p.m., so this is tonight, we're already seeing those tropical storm force wind gusts in Collier County, which means you need to be already where you're going to be as those tropical storm force winds approach. It won't be much later in Lee County, see 9 p.m., 36 mile per hour wind gusts. So this is
pretty much a certainty now that we're going to have some massive devastation to parts of South Florida. We're trying to fine-tune the details right now, and the National Hurricane Center is going to be updating their latest track. And since the hurricane has been going along that coast of Cuba and has changed intensity a little bit, we'll get a new update here coming up shortly, and we'll have to see what the trend of that track is. Is it going to move to the west more, or is it going to be staying over the same spot? If it stays over the same spot, that's just more consistency, and we may be able to, if we can here in a bit, there's a spaghetti plot, you may have seen this before, where it shows all the different track forecasts from the National Hurricane Center. We'll try to put that graphic together for you to show what the thinking is, and likely we'll see those all coming together over one spot. So the new track will be coming out shortly, and again, it is so critical. If the storm veers a little bit to the right of this current track, it changes the whole dynamic of the storm surge. But again, planning for the worst right now and hoping for the best is where we're at.
Right. Chance for the hurricane-force winds, which is greater than 74 miles per hour, looking more and more like a sure thing. As Scott was just mentioning, any shift, any little change, we're talking 25 miles east or west, is going to make a huge difference in terms of who gets the hurricane-force winds and who sees the most severe impacts from storm surge. And that's what we've been saying for the past week or so on Fox 4 Morning News, is we're talking 25, 30 miles either direction is really going to change what we see in terms of impact. So here's a look at that storm surge potential, which is why we're seeing those additional evacuations issued in Lee County.
That's right. So this is dependent on storm track because that determines the wind direction, and it determines on the size, the wind speed, of course, and the speed of the storm system, so the duration. So all these things combined, this particular storm surge potential, it's just a great new addition the National Hurricane Center has added here. They've also got the, I can't remember the name of it right now, but they've added some new graphics on their page, and we're putting them into the computer here.
The experimental graphics?
The experimental time of those first arrival of tropical storm force winds and hurricane force winds. But you see red like this in southwest Florida. And by the way, southwest Florida is much more susceptible to storm surge than southeast Florida, the way the coastline lies out. So again, there were so many times I remember years ago looking and thinking, well, the only way Fort Myers is going to get a direct hit from a storm is one that comes out of the Gulf of Mexico because it has that direct line. It is so difficult for a hurricane to take this track and not hit major land before coming in to Fort Myers. It's grazing Cuba right now, but the chances to a storm coming from Africa, to come all the way across the ocean and follow that line and only go over small islands that don't affect the strength of the storm. We are getting that grazing over Cuba right now, but to have a size storm this massive to make a direct hit on Fort Myers is something that hasn't been seen before. So if you are out there and saying, I came through Charlie and it came through Punta Gorda and Andrew, this is not Charlie and this is not Andrew. This is a superstorm coming in.
And the threat is also growing across the board in terms of each individual impact that we're looking at with that shift further and further west. And you're right, the tropical waves emerging off the coast of Africa to happen to land right here in southwest Florida, it's one of those things that really is worst case scenario. And unfortunately, we're starting to see that play out in some of these forecasts. We're looking at, in terms of rainfall, anywhere from 10 to 12, 13 inches across southwest Florida as we head between now and Tuesday. And remember, this is on already saturated ground. It is our rainy season, and any afternoon thunderstorm moving through quickly already causes ponding on roadways. So when we're looking at rain totals anywhere between 8 and 11, right now it's the 8.5 in Fort Myers, 11 inches in Naples, that is going to cause flooding. And then on top of the storm surge threat that we're seeing through coastal Charlotte, Lee, and Collier counties.
That's right. So it's the rain on top of the ocean water that's coming into the Gulf as well. So you have all this salt water coming in, then you've got the rain, and it all has to return back. So you will be cut off if you are staying in an evacuation zone. You will be cut off. You will be on your own. So you'll need to have all of those supplies in place. We just hope that you do have those in place right now. We're getting flash flood warnings and watches put up right now, so that we're going to keep a close eye on these. Also, some pretty heavy rainfall rates coming in. Look at that heavy rain pushing now
into Homestead.
Into Homestead, exactly.
Over 2 inches an hour is the rainfall rate there.
And this is what we'll be seeing this, and maybe even higher rates coming in as the storm gets closer. So the storm system is moving at a decent clip, a little quicker than Harvey as it moved into north of Corpus Christi. Harvey looped around and came back. That's not going to happen here. So the rain won't be the biggest impact. It will be as we go further inland. But inland flooding, you have to keep in mind with the rainfall totals we showed you, that's the #2 killer in a hurricane, outside of the storm surge being #1, inland flooding. And when people are killed in flooding, almost all of the time it's because they're in their vehicle and trying to drive through roadways that are flooded with water. So we need to keep that in mind for all of our inland folks. Again, you need to be off the roads and in your shelters, and we're seeing some of these shelters filling up. And so if you're planning on going, now's the time.
And we're seeing long lines at shelters, people trying to get in still, and yet the rain bands from Irma already starting to move through. So unfortunately for those in Collier County where Sam Sosa has been waiting in line to get into those shelters, we're starting to see those thunderstorms move through. And that's why it's important to leave as soon as possible. If you're in one of those new evacuation zones and have just been ordered to get out, do so as quickly as possible, because you need to be where you're going before this evening, before those tropical storm force winds arrive. And as it stands right now, there's a good chance that you'll already be seeing some impacts as you're heading to those shelters in terms of the rain that we're seeing this morning. The impacts have already started. And so for those that are trying to evacuate, you need to be where you're going by the time the worst of it gets here. And that's going to start to arrive late tonight into tomorrow morning. So you don't want to be stuck on the roadways. You don't want to be stuck on I-75 or 41 or any of those areas trying to get to those shelters where you can be safe. You need to get there as quickly as possible, which means you need to leave as quickly as possible.
And we can see this storm system right here, which may have been the same one that was over Marco Island, 1123 over Naples. Some very heavy rain is coming into Naples here, just on the west side right now. I'm sure you can see the skies darkening to the west, and that's what's going to be heading on in.
So the latest update, it looks like it was just released. Irma has dropped down to a Category 3 with 125-mile-per-hour winds. Remember, 130 is Category 4, so just right on the edge there. This is all the weakening because of Cuba, because of the eye's interaction with Cuba. So although it's encouraging to see it weaken to a Category 3, again, re-strengthening is in the forecast as Irma, again, passes over that warm water, gets a little bit more of that fuel, and then heads toward. So let's check out this track. This is brand new. In fact, we're seeing it for the first time right now, trying to kind of let you know what to expect. It does look like it's forecast to become a Category 4 again as it approaches the Florida Peninsula with wind speeds of around 140 miles per hour.
Which is down 10 miles per hour from what it had said before, which is not that significant here. It's still very similar. And now here we go, coming up right over Fort Myers.
Right over Cape Coral,
Cape Coral and Sanibel.
8 p.m. Sunday with 140-mile-per-hour winds. So that's when we're expecting the eye, but you'll get the hurricane force winds before that. You'll get the hurricane force winds, I would say, by, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon?
Yes, and then the strongest wind likely maybe an hour before that. So let's say 5 to 7 p.m. for the strongest wind to come across Cape Coral, and then here it is tracking north again.
Still Category 4 in this update over Tampa.
Over Tampa, Category 4 over Tampa. That's new because it had dropped it to a 3. And so that's interesting. So we'll get the strengthening. The track, Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's about exactly where it was.
About the same. I don't think that this latest update gave us a shift in track. I do believe this is exactly where it was. It's the strength that's changed. And the wind speed, so the strength as Irma tracks north.
And the National Hurricane Center will tell you that they are much better at forecasting track than they are at intensity. Intensity forecasts are extremely difficult, and now with it at 125 miles per hour, they drop the intensity down, but they're going to increase it as it goes over the warm Gulf water. So, and then actually have it be stronger in Tampa now than was originally forecast. But again, we're talking Sanibel Island, Cape Coral, right through some of these very vulnerable areas.
Yeah,
and
up
right
through Charlotte County into Sarasota County, then into the Tampa area. Another interesting note of this last update, I noticed still moving west. Don't see that northerly component yet. West at 9 miles per hour. So it looks like the forward speed has slowed a little bit, and we still haven't really seen that northern turn quite yet, which is what the models have been saying the past couple of days. Remember, we needed it to turn north as soon as possible for it to go up the East Coast. At this point, that's not happening. We're already past that point, and it's still going due west as of the latest update.
And when you have consecutive tracks over the same location, it usually means a higher model confidence.
Yes.
In other words, they feel pretty confident that this is really where we are finally going to see land. Where it actually makes landfall, we'll be here letting you know. But again, it is still a forecast, but the closer we get, the probability increases that we're going to be right on that mark. And we've been talking about the center of the storm, but Danny, it's so important. We don't want to just focus on the center of the storm. The reason we're focusing on it right now is to give you a wind direction, because if it goes offshore just a little bit, another 10, 15 miles, it changes the wind direction and changes the dynamic of the storm surge that will be coming in. But this storm system is massive, so if you live in Lee County and you're maybe evacuating to the center part of the state, this is going to be a massive hurricane for all of South Florida.
And that's the reality that seems to be becoming more and more clear with each update that we get. For the past few days, the trend has been further west, which is not the news that we wanted to hear. But since we aren't seeing major updates to the track in this last update, it does look like a higher confidence that that is where it's headed. Another thing I want to talk about is this tornado threat. As the track continues to shift a little further west, it does bring the threat for tornadoes to portions of southwest Florida, because now we are going to be on the northeast side of the hurricane, essentially, as it continues its track up the west coast. And we've seen that so far this morning. We've seen 2 tornado warnings. This is not a warned cell right now, but it's something else to think about as we head into the rest of today, that tornadoes are a definite possibility. They're a threat.
Yeah, you have to consider the possibility that you'll get one in any one of these storm systems. We don't see rotation. That little signature, the little icon you see there, that's saying the radar is seeing hail in it. If it's a rotating storm, which would be an indicator before a tornado, we would see a little arrow rotate. We don't see that right now, but
check out that rainfall rate, 2.95 inches per hour. That's almost 3 inches per hour. That is a very heavy, that's a very strong cell, and that is dumping torrential rain, and unfortunately tracking right into Naples, right into the heart of Naples at this point.
And this is why we're asking people to prepare in advance, because now you have to start preparing in some of these heavy showers coming in Naples, from Naples southward. That's where this storm system is going to move in. You can see some of the locations there on your screen and the times, some of these specific locations. Again, this will be very, very heavy rain coming in for the next 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, it'll be to Golden Gate High School by about 11:20. By 11:18, it looks like Palm Springs Public Park is the timing for this cell. And unfortunately, as we've seen Sam out there, still a lot of people in line waiting for those for their shelters, and that's not even including the people on the roads driving to the shelters through conditions like this. It's just going to get worse as that tropical storm force wind field arrives to southwest Florida, which is expected to happen as we head into tonight.
Yeah, and if we could take a pan down, we were just looking down a little further south there. Look at the next wave. You can see scattered showers coming across the peninsula that could intensify, but that's that's an outer band right there. Yeah, coming into the Keys again. We talked about it passing right over Key Largo, and that one pushing towards the southwest as well. Latest Doppler radar, that's what we're looking at right there. Some very intense wind in there. No warnings.
From Marathon to Homestead, it looks like, is where we're seeing that rain band stretch at this point with the heaviest rain.
Yeah, and again, the Doppler radar is located on land, and so as it looks out over the ocean, as the Earth curves underneath it, it starts to look up higher into the storm, so you don't see as much. So it looks like when you look further out, maybe there's not quite as much, but you'll continue to see these bands redevelop and just keep coming in one after another after another. And when we get to the core of this storm system, there will be relentless wind and rain for hours.
Another threat that I want to talk about, which is increasing as this track does seem to favor the west, is the storm surge. Storm surge, as we've said this morning, is the deadliest part of any hurricane, and it looks like the threat for that storm surge does continue to increase, and that's on top of the already flooded conditions. So here's an animation, kind of an explainer of why storm surge happens and how it happens.
Yeah, and it's not just waves, and that's the difference here. So you see waves coming on in, normal sea level right there, but then we get a surge as the eye wall approaches, not the eye, pretty close to the eye, but with the eye wall, you get a surge where the water rises. The actual level of the sea rises. So there it is, rising 3 feet. You still have the waves on top of it. And when you take a level of 3 feet to 5 feet, 6 feet, that water moves inland a long way depending on the lay of the land. And that's why there are some places that will be inundated with water. And then you have the battering waves on top of that. So when you see the video, look at that 12 plus feet.
Which
that's going to
be what the forecast is on Sanibel right now, up to 12 feet.
Exactly. And so you saw that home right there completely inundated. So any low-lying structures, the lowest ones, could be very, very vulnerable. When you see the pictures after, and again, we see the before, we see the pictures after. We never see it as it's happening because there are no crews out there. It's just too dangerous. And then you say, how did this happen? It's the ocean that is moving inland, or here, in this case, the Gulf of Mexico that is going to move inland and actually take the houses off the foundations with the wind tearing the roofs off.
And you had a really good example earlier where you said you can see a boat as it's driving through a lake or an ocean or river, and that bubble of water that comes up at the edge of the boat, that's essentially what's happening. The hurricane is pushing this bubble of water up onto the land surface, and that's why we're seeing greater than 9 feet in some spots above ground. Yeah. And that's, like you said, not just waves, but we're talking a wall of water.
And it comes in with the strongest wind of the hurricane. They both come in simultaneously, and sometimes there's a break between one of those outer bands and that eye wall. So here's the latest track, Danny. Look at it, checking out the latest on our future cast here, approaching Key West.
Looks like the eye goes right over Key West. Again, timing for that is going to be around 2 a.m. Tonight into tomorrow morning. And then the strongest portion, which is right around that eye wall, you see the deeper red shading, looks like it'll track right up our coastline. In fact, the center of the eye, as this futurecast stands right now, over Fort Myers, which means we get that wave right before and that wave right after, an eerie calm in the middle, but the intense conditions right before and right after. That then tracks north through Charlotte County and then up into the Tampa area. And it's not weakening. Remember, that latest track still has it to Category 4 as it heads into Tampa.
And we have to keep in mind, ahead of the storm, wind is blowing. In some places, will be blowing offshore. Once that hurricane, if you're to the west of the eye, which won't, some of the northern counties, you get the wind blowing offshore. But when the storm system goes by, the wind blows in the opposite direction. So whatever the water is doing on one side of the storm, it's doing opposite on the other side of the storm. And so people have to be careful, because if the eye goes around you, the wind just slowly changes, and then all of a sudden the water now is moving away, and now it's coming back on in. So say, oh, we didn't really get a storm surge here. It may be because it's going to come in on the backside of the hurricane.
Right. Wait for it, essentially, is what you're saying there. And we're seeing the threat for storm surge increase further north. Yesterday, it was just that storm surge warning in Collier County. As that track has shifted a little further west, we're now looking at a storm surge threat through portions of Lee and Charlotte, which is why we've seen those additional evacuations issued for those counties, because of the threat for storm surge that seems to be steadily increasing based on the current track of the storm.
And those tropical storm force winds moving on in, and the entire state will be engulfed by tropical storm force winds and hurricane force winds. And I can't remember the last time the entire state, outside of the Panhandle, was engulfed by that much wind. As you can see here, if it went over the center of the state, they would say it would be a worst-case scenario for everybody. But unfortunately, the West Coast is going to get hit harder.
Right. So this is worst case scenario isn't something that I necessarily like to say, because I don't think it's our job to necessarily panic anyone. But what we're looking at this point really is that worst case scenario that I've been laying out all week long, saying this is really worst case scenario. This is what we want you to plan for. Worst case scenario, just in case. And now we're unfortunately starting to see that unfold, with the eye potentially going right up the west coast of Florida. I hope that means you're prepared.
That's why the governor was very clear, laying out the plans well in advance. He has done an amazing job at gathering the information from all the different organizations and getting people prepared, and saying we can rebuild your homes, but we can't rebuild your lives. And so prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So for some folks, the track of the storm system for the East Coast maybe won't be as bad, but now here we are, hopefully having prepared for the worst, because the worst of what the storm will bring is coming to the west side. How strong the storm will be is still a little bit in question, but we do know it's going to be a major hurricane.
Remember, 70 miles outside of that eye is where we're seeing that hurricane-force wind field, which means 140 miles across. That is the Florida Peninsula. So even a shift at this point further west or east is still going to bring that hurricane-force wind field to southwest Florida. So that's what we want you to plan for, essentially. And that's why it's important to, if you've been evacuated recently in this latest evacuations, to get going now, because we need you to be in place by the time the tropical storm force winds arrive this evening.
We've got storm surge, we've got devastating wind, we've got flooding and power outages that will cover the entire state. We had to be prepared.
That's exactly right. I think now, are we sending it back to Chris and Jane at this point?
I think so. Danny and Scott, thank you guys so much. Great explanation. We definitely look for that 11 o'clock change from the Weather Center. Want to tell you guys real quick at home, this is the time to keep your batteries charged. We've got our phones charged up until the very moment, and hopefully you have power packs or battery packs, because when the power goes out, not a case of if, when the power goes out, we will be streaming on our website, fox4now.com, as well as our Facebook page and on our app. So if you have the time today, now is the time to download the Fox 4 app and follow us on Facebook, Fox 4 on Facebook as well.
And in a lot of ways, those hours after the power goes out will be some of the most important hours to get the information.
You want to conserve as much as possible.
Right.
We do have some shelter updates for you, because people are now really taking heed those warnings. So Lee County shelters now open: East Lee County High, Harns Marsh Middle, Oak Hammock Middle, Ray V. Podorf Elementary, in Fort Myers, and Germain Arena in Estero, which, by the way, Germain Arena is now taking pets. They are now allowing pets if you do choose to go there as your shelter today.
A lot of people happy to hear that. Okay, we did also just get an update from Charlotte County on their shelters. They are still taking evacuees at Liberty Elementary School. That is a pet-friendly shelter. And also Heron Creek Middle School, also pet-friendly, and Northport High School there in Northport. Okay, we understand parts of, as Danny was just saying, parts of Collier County are getting some rain right now. We want to go to Tony, who is live in Vanderbilt Beach. Tony, I understand you're not seeing any rain now, but maybe some cloudy skies and a lot of people behind you is what we understand.
We were a little on edge when that tornado warning was issued a while back, and then obviously it expiring. But we've heard a little rumbles of thunder. We've heard, we've had a lot of wind. But besides any of that, in terms of any severe weather at this moment, still nothing yet. No rain to report just yet. But actually, in the last couple of hours, we've seen people come out here, do their morning rituals, jump in the water, despite the dangers and despite what everyone is saying in terms of our emergency managers. But we've got people out kind of basically enjoying what could be their last day on Vanderbilt Beach, just because of the storm potential, the storm surge potential out here. Obviously, this isn't a very severe area for that. So a lot of people know the dangers and hopefully know the risks to be out here right now. But this is a lot of people wanting to see if is any early signs of arrival as it pertains to sea level rise, chop out there on the Gulf. But in terms of out here, people are some of the majority.
Okay, Tony, we are having a microphone issue there. Sounds like the battery might be going out on your microphone. We will get back to you in just a little bit.
It's amazing to see people, though, behind him, just taking a look at the storm before it really comes in.
Let's hope they have enough time to get to a safe place. So now we want to go to Four in Your Corner, Sam Sosa, who's also in Collier County at a shelter. And Sam, we understand you're getting a little bit of rain where you are. How's that affecting things?
Okay. That's fine. We'll check back in with Sam in a minute. She's not ready just yet. But want to talk about some of the evacuation zones. They've been expanded in Collier County. So, again, the best thing to do there, because it's west of 41, south of 41, but then other areas there. The streets are very specific. So, again, best to go to fox4now.com to check those out. And then we did hear from Lee County Emergency Management about some of the zones. Zone B in Lee County has now been ordered to evacuate.
And specifically when you're talking about Cape Coral, that's a pretty big chunk
of
Cape Coral. So those might be the biggest stories right now as we wait for Hurricane Irma, the evacuation zones in Southwest, and we're talking mandatory evacuation zones in Southwest Florida, are increasing. Okay, we understand Sam is ready now. Sam, I know you're getting a little bit of rain where you are. How is that affecting the process with the shelter?
Hey guys. Hey. Oh, I'm sorry. Hey guys, a little bit soggy over here. Not affecting much though. People were still willing to brave the rain. to get into the shelter. However, this one, which is Golden Terrace Elementary Intermediate, is now at capacity. So you might be wondering why there's people still standing in line. Officials have told us that they will be bringing buses over here to bus people over to Immokalee. Some shelters that open at 9 a.m. in Immokalee are Lake Trafford Elementary and Pinecrest Elementary. We're also being told that more are going to open up there. So that's where these folks will be going. But yeah, the rain didn't really deter people much from seeking shelter. Everyone just wants to get into a shelter right now because like I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter what kind of structure you live in, what neighborhood you live in, everyone's scared of the storm and everyone's looking for a safe hurricane shelter. And as you can see, we still have people with their suitcases, children. If you are going to go to a shelter, just some suggestions, things that you really should bring: necessary medications, your cell phones, cell phone chargers, toiletries, food, water, flashlights, bedding, anything else you need to be comfortable. If you have kids, like a lot of these folks do, you might want to bring some silent toys to keep them busy to brave this storm. But as you can see, people are ready to be in shelters for days. We're going to keep updating this situation and let you guys know when more shelters open up. I know a lot of you are anxious to hear about that news, but as soon as we get word, we will let you guys know. That's over here in Collier County. I'm live in Collier, Sam Sosa, Fox 4, in your corner.
Sam, I want to ask you a quick question, if we could stay with you for just a minute. And I see the people behind you. You said that shelter is at capacity right now, so these folks are just waiting on a bus. I wonder if you've talked to any of them, if you get a sense of how they're doing right now. Are they frustrated? What is their emotion right now?
Oh, Chris, we've been hearing people's frustrations all day. They're extremely frustrated because some of these people, this isn't the first shelter they've tried. They've tried 2-3 shelters, waited lines, and they haven't been able to get in because they reach capacity before they're able to make it to the front of the line. And note that this shelter only opened at 9 a.m. And as soon as people realized that shelter was opening at 9 a.m., they flocked over here. It's 11:23 right now, and it's full to capacity. And that actually happened even earlier. It happened, a good 30 minutes ago. So it really just shows the need in this situation in Collier. People are really, bracing themselves for this storm. See, a lot of people are starting to walk away now, realizing that the shelter is at capacity. But like I said, some are sticking around because buses will come over here and bus people over to Immokalee, where there are 2 other shelters that opened at 9 a.m. I don't have the status on those, how full they are, but they'll be bused over there. And we're also being told that other shelters will be opening up in Immokalee.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.
The human element here is just, it's just incredible. We haven't even gotten to the storm yet.
Right.
And already, can you imagine the emotions that these folks are going through?
It's got to be running high. You're frustrated.
2-3 shelters, just trying to find a safe place for you and your family, and you can't get in, and you go to a next place and you can't get in.
Absolutely.
Just heart-wrenching. So hopefully those folks will find a safe place to stay.
Yeah, we definitely send our prayers and warm thoughts to them to keep safe. We want to toss it over now to For Your Corner's Gillian Idol, who is now at Alico Arena, which is also seeing long lines. Gillian, what's the latest there?
Yes, well, Jane and Chris, and speaking of that human element, it's just an incredible sight to see people helping each other, strangers coming together, helping get their belongings inside here. Now, speaking to officials here, we're learning more information, and this is very valuable information for those still looking for a place to seek shelter. Now, they opened at 10 this morning. As you can see, definitely very long lines here. They're trying to expedite the process by handing out those registration forms for people and also requirements to be ordered to check in here. But it's important to note that they aren't going to be trying to turn anyone away. They say as soon as the Alico Arena fills up, they plan to use other buildings on campus that are hurricane-approved shelters. And right now, though, they haven't run out of space here just yet. But again, once they do, which they say is very likely here at Alico Arena, they're going to be looking for other buildings on campus. Also talking to them about the students and where they're putting students. So they said for those who didn't evacuate, which is about 200 to 300 students, they are all going to be placing them in Eagle Hall. It's their newest dorm here on campus. They say they're going to keep all the students in one spot, and then they're opening this to the public. We're on Florida Gulf Coast University's campus here in Estero, Florida, and they opened this. Originally, it wasn't going to be be open. And then after, obviously, that demand earlier today and also after yesterday seeing places fill up throughout Southwest Florida, they decided to open Alico Arena to the public. Like I mentioned, very long lines here. The weather is changing. The temperature is dropping. It's getting a little bit windier outside, but people just coming together, trying to get inside before, the weather picks up here. And like our meteorologists have been saying, people also trying to find shelter before tropical storm winds approach Southwest Florida. So you can see just people with their pets, with their belongings, just trying to rush and find a place to seek shelter before it starts to get a little bit worse out here weather-wise. But pretty much, though, it's a calm atmosphere out here. People coming together. Also, you can imagine lots of anxiety and unknowns and a lot of emotions going through people, whether we've today been to several different shelters throughout Southwest Florida, and obviously you can imagine there's been tears and there's been hugging and praying and just people experiencing a flood of emotions as there's so many unknowns in this. And like I've mentioned, just 24 hours ago, speaking to people, they say, they always knew they had a plan in place if a hurricane were to come, whether that would be to evacuate or hunker down in their homes. But as the storm approaches and it's looking like it's taking more of a west turn towards Southwest Florida, of course, as that all changes, and our meteorologists will know more about that. But as that's changed here, people now wanting to seek shelter in a safer place than what they once previously thought was their go-to place. Of course, we're going to keep updated with this, and we're going to bring you the latest information on air and online. You can always check up for that latest information on our mobile app. That's Fox 4 Now in the mobile store. Also, our website, fox4now.com. But for now, reporting live in Estero, Gillian Idol, Fox 4, in your corner.
Gillian, thank you. We are seeing a tale of two emotions, one very frustrated, the other one very helpful and unselfish. And really, that's where you see these signs of humanity and kindness through such potential disaster heading our way.
Yeah, we're going to need that. We're going to need a lot more of that in the coming days. Okay, it's 11:28 right now. We're just getting started. You're watching Fox 4 continuous coverage of Hurricane Irma. We're going to take a little break, but we're going to be back in just a minute.
Wherever you are, whatever screen you have, Fox 4 is in your corner, over the air and on Roku, streaming live on fox4now.com and Facebook Live, keeping you informed, helping to keep you safe. Fox 4 in your corner.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Beach day. Rain delay. Or hurricane. No matter what's in the forecast, good or bad, trust Derek Beasley and the Fox 4 Storm Shield weather team to keep you informed, to keep you safe. On air, online, and on the go. Fox 4 Storm Shield weather in your corner.
As hurricane season heats up, Fox 4 is in your corner, helping you prepare for major threats heading our way.
At Fox 4, we want you to know that when severe weather threatens, you can count on the Fox 4 Storm Shield weather team around the clock. The latest forecast track has been shifted, so whether it's 3 p.m. or 3 a.m., if your safety's at risk, we're here for you. Because no one should have to go through the storm alone.
Fox 4 Chief Meteorologist Derek Beasley and the Storm Shield weather team in your corner.
been here for several hours now. We're going to keep going, giving you all the information that you need to keep you and your family safe. A lot of headlines right now, including evacuation centers, new ones opening and closing because there is so much need. Also, mandatory evacuations, new ones in Lee County and Collier County.
All right, now is the time to download the Fox 4 app, load up the fox4now.com website, as well as follow us on the Facebook page. We are streaming there right now. We will be doing so through this event. We are with you before, during, and after. And that includes our super weather team here, Danny and Scott, that are covering this from all angles. What is the latest on Irma?
We just got that latest update down. No major change to the track. What we did see a change in is the hurricane category, now down to a category 3, thanks to the interaction of the core with the northern coast of Cuba. But we want to caution people, that's not, we don't want to give you false hope.
Sure.
Re-strengthening is forecast to occur.
Yeah, that's right. 125-mile-an-hour winds now, but then forecasted to go back up to 130, 140, possibly 150, with strengthening as it moves back over open water just before it makes landfall. And again, the track consistent to the last track of the National Hurricane Center.
Yes, the 5 a.m., the 11 a.m. updates both.
And that's a sign that the computer models, all the computer models are converging on one spot. There are still some models that are saying, well, it may track off to a little bit more to the right or left, which will make maybe some very distinct differences in what happens here. Yes. But the overall picture, keep in mind, the overall picture when you look at this track, this is a massive storm. We're showing a point here, and that cone is getting smaller because the uncertainty there's less uncertainty right now. And so what's going to happen is we're going to get a good eye of the track, but keep in mind the storm system is much wider than that cone. And so that's why you see all of the red, those hurricane warnings for all of South Florida. So, Danny, why don't you take us right through the forecast, the latest track of where it's headed for Fort Myers.
Right. Right now, although a Category 3, it is forecast to re-strengthen to a Category 4, approach the Keys, the Florida Keys, and make landfall in the Florida Keys as we head toward tomorrow morning, making landfall as a Category 4. From there, it is forecast to slide either right up against the coast or right along the coast as it continues to track north. Pay attention to that cone of uncertainty, no longer including a lot of those east coast, the east half, I should say, of the peninsula. So it looks like those models are starting to get a better idea of where Irma is heading. And unfortunately, that is going to put the strongest hurricane force winds right along our coastline. So timing-wise, Sunday, 8 p.m. is when it looks like that Category 4 Hurricane Irma, the core, could potentially make landfall in either Lee County and then move into Charlotte County. But another change here is maintaining that Category 4 status as it moves northward, even into Tampa. And that's because it won't have as much interaction with land than it would have if it made landfall a little earlier. Sliding up the coastline keeps it over that water longer, keeping the strength in place longer, and it could be still a Category 4 as it tracks up through the Tampa area, and then possibly even hurricane strength as it hops into from the Florida-Georgia line, I should say.
In fact, it's showing it as a Category 3 storm still in South Georgia. That is absolutely amazing.
And Category 1 potentially still moving through Atlanta. So this is an incredibly strong storm. If it is going to maintain category status, I should say hurricane status, excuse me, from southern Florida up through Atlanta.
Yeah, exactly. And notice the new on that advisory warnings now listed all the way up the coastline on both coasts, all the way up to the top of the peninsula.
And we're also seeing the storm surge warning increase up through the Tampa Bay area as well. Another good sign, or another sure sign, I should say. You can see the storm surge map, that this is going to be stronger, longer, and impact a more widespread area with that stronger status as we head into the next couple of days.
Yeah, let's go over some of the areas there around Fort Myers and even points to the south and north there.
So we see Collier County, the entire county, under that storm surge warning. Same for Lee County. As you head into Charlotte, is going to be the coastal half under that storm surge warning. So the area right around the Peace River, of course, right over into Rotunda, even included in that storm surge warning, of course. And then it looks like up through coastal Sarasota County, going to be included in that storm surge warning as well. And in fact, even further north than Sarasota County. But this means that our entire coastline from Northport down to Marco Island now under that storm surge warning. We are looking at the potential for storm surge, which is the deadliest portion of a hurricane, through our entire viewing area. In fact, some of these numbers are starting to jump as well. You see the red shading there, which is the greater than 9 feet, is starting to grow through portions of Lee County, It looks like through Collier County, we could see storm surge. Granted, it tapers off, but we could see storm surge even greater than a foot about to Alligator Alley. Remember, I-75 takes that turn right at Naples, and that's where we see the cutoff for storm surge. That is really far inland to see storm surge. And Scott, that's just a sign of the power that Irma has.
Yeah, that's where the main brunt of the storm will be coming in, first hitting down there. And you see the storm surge specifics right here, but the last map, the storm surge warning, went halfway across Alligator Alley. And so we're talking, like, as you mentioned, the southern tip of the peninsula being inundated with water. And that last storm surge map showing a lot more red, seeing it around the south side of Sanibel Island as well, as that storm system, as that track is just to the west. That's an updated storm surge map there. And so the potential is getting higher and higher for 9 to 12 feet.
Right, and what you couldn't see in that map was Charlotte County. I do want to mention Charlotte County. That was a really good detailed look at Lee and Collier. But Charlotte, the coastal half, is still under that storm surge warning. And remember, those evacuations have been issued in Charlotte County now. Another good sign that that storm surge potential is there. And the shading color wasn't the deep red in Charlotte County, but we do have the potential for storm surge, I believe, up to 6 to 8 feet. 4 to 8 feet, I believe, is the range for storm surge potential in Charlotte County.
Yeah, maybe we can zoom in. If we switch over to the storm surge potential map, this is the warning right here. If we look at the actual map here, I don't know if we can zoom in on this map or not. We may not be able to, but if you could take a closer look, maybe we can see.
So you can see just at the very top of your screen, you can see the orange shading through portions. There we go. Perfect. Can we get it just a little, scooch it a little further down so that we can see Charlotte County there? We need to see Port Charlotte, other direction. I'm sorry, move it further north so that we can see Charlotte County.
Yeah, we want to see further north of Fort Myers and
there we go.
heading on up to Charlotte County.
You see portions of Port Charlotte as well as Punta Gorda in that orange shading, which means greater than 6 feet. And further inland, you can see, including all portions of Port Charlotte, storm surge threat is there greater than 1 foot. Over into Rotunda, down through Boca Grande, of course, Pine Island included in that as well. All seeing that storm surge threat. Up through the Peace River, of course, which makes sense. We will see that storm surge threat greater than 6 feet possible above ground.
Yeah, this is a great map. You know, since they've updated it, why don't we zoom in real tight? Let's go real tight if we can, and we'll get a nice look starting at Bonita Springs there, and we'll just kind of creep north. Go as tight as we can on this map here so we can give people the absolute specifics on where we're going. So there's Bonita Springs right there. That's good. And now we'll slide the map and start looking north, a little further north, to see all that red, again, which is a storm surge greater than 9 feet. As we move on up and come closer to Fort Myers Beach has got it's just, you know, again, take a look at some of these locations.
Yes,
this is
Lover's Key included in that. Coconut, it looks like portions of coastal Estero, I should say, included in that greater than 9 feet. We're going to move now. You see Estero Island completely under that red shading, which means greater than 9 foot storm surge across all of Estero Island, which is, of course, our local beaches. We've got Lover's Key over through Fort Myers Beach. We're also going to include portions of San Carlos Park in this red shading here as you move into the southern portion of Fort Myers, taking it a little further north here. Let's get some of the cities. So Forest Island Park, we could potentially see 9 foot storm surge. Cypress Lake, greater than 6 feet. Storm surge is possible. Truckland, we could see greater than 6 feet. Penarasa, greater than 9 feet. Cypress Lakes, greater than 6 feet. McGregor, it looks like Iona could see anywhere from 3 to 6 feet of storm surge. And then we get into Cape Coral. The southernmost portion of the Cape could see greater than 6 feet for the storm surge. And even as far north as it looks like right around Pine Island, I believe, south of Pine Island is where we have that storm surge threat right now. And then, of course, around the Peace River as you head through North Fort Myers. Portions of North Fort Myers closest to the Caloosahatchee River. I'm sorry. We're looking in Lee County. People living closest to the Caloosahatchee here, we could see spots where we get greater than 9 feet.
And you see how it is on the west side. And so with the southerly wind, we're bringing that water further to the north. And so the Caloosahatchee River would bring a storm surge up onto Cape Coral here. But you see all the way to Cypress Lake. That is so far inland to have that much water. That is just incredible to see a map that looks like this. Not so much North Fort Myers, but McGregor Boulevard, down by the landings, heading on the turnoff down to Sanibel Island. All of this, you see yellows and reds here, and the orange, which is 6 feet. I mean,
so Sanibel is starting to get some of that greater than 9 foot storm surge as well. Earlier, at the last update, it was greater than 6. Now we're bumping portions to greater than 9.
You look at Sanibel Island, and that map there tells you that all of Sanibel Island has the potential storm surge of at least 3 feet at Captiva, and only in some parts of Sanibel Island, but many places greater than 6 feet, the entire island.
That doesn't bode well. That is a scary fact right there, that the entire island of Sanibel could potentially be under 6 feet of water as this storm surge pushes in. And you can see it pushes quite far inland as you head into Fort Myers and as you head into the Cape. If we could take it further north again into just a little further north into North Fort Myers and then in the southern portion of Charlotte County, just to give folks in Charlotte, again, a better look.
So all the way up the river, look at the
All the way to
reds.
Buckingham,
Sure.
we could see storm surge.
And that was the concern that we had talked about. If the system moved further to the west, we would get a southeast wind, and that southeast wind will go right up these rivers, which of course naturally funnel in because that's the way the water's coming out.
So folks in Peace River shores greater than 6 feet above ground is what the storm surge is looking like right now, right around the Peace River, of course. South Fort, about the same. Port Charlotte, again, the portions of Port Charlotte closest to the Peace River could see 6 feet, but even just north of Port Charlotte, we could see around a foot of storm surge. And it's about the same for Punta Gorda. Pretty far inland of areas in Punta Gorda, we could see a foot or two of storm surge.
And I don't know exactly what happened during Charlie in the Punta Gorda area, getting hit with a direct hit there with Charlie at that last moment as it jogged to the right. Due to some intensification around the hurricane, making it jog just a little bit. But they've seen the water before, and, well, here it comes again. And this is, you know, if you were to draw this map up before hurricane season and say this is what could happen, we would all be looking at each other saying, well, wow, this would be that's got to be a worst-case scenario. I can't even imagine that much water in these areas. And here we are showing what is now forecasted from the National Hurricane Center for that potential storm surge.
Right. We've listed out worst-case scenario for the past week in hopes that people would be able to prepare for that. Never wanted that to actually play out. But we're looking at worst-case scenario for many different threats, not just storm surge, but also hurricane-force winds with that eye of a Category 4 storm moving over the coast. Sure. We're looking at worst case scenario in terms of rainfall being on the east side of the storm in general. So unfortunately, that worst case scenario is starting to become our reality, and I just hope that you at home are prepared for that. And those that did prepare are going to be fine. We're going to get through this together. We are going to ride out the storm together. Those that are in the secure shelters, you will be taken care of. It's just those that are at home deciding, I'm going to ride this one out.
Yeah, a lot of people did leave. Obviously, the highways are packed. I flew into Tampa last night. In fact, I flew in on a plane that only had a few people coming in, but it was a massive aircraft because they were flying into Tampa to take extra people out. Many of the workers as far north as Tampa having that issue. If that's the case, they'll be getting airplanes out of the airports. I haven't heard the latest word on the airport, but I can imagine they don't want to have aircraft on the ground with a Category 4 storm pushing on in because the aircraft will be destroyed. That creates massive damage. So it's likely the airport is going to be shut down for a while.
Yeah, and that's... It really is just a scary situation. This is one of those storms that neither of us ever wanted to have to forecast. But at this point, we're trying to give you the most accurate information that we have. And as it's looking like right now, this is a potentially catastrophic event in both storm surge and wind speeds and wind destruction.
This is the strongest storm on the globe right now. And there are very few people on this planet who've experienced a hurricane like this.
Right.
That puts it into perspective. So there are a lot of folks out there, are some folks out there that are deciding to stay and say, well, I've ridden out hurricanes before. We saw it happen with Katrina. People saying, well, in Camille, the water came up to here. So that's my benchmark. It can't come up any higher.
Yeah.
Well, it did. It was up above some people's homes around Mobile, Alabama, points to the east of New Orleans, got hit hardest with Katrina, and the storm surge was 9 to 12 feet, some places a little higher, and complete and total devastation. So that's why if you're listening right now and you're one of those folks you've got the ability to go to a shelter, you need to do what the governor says and go to the shelter.
And unfortunately, time is starting to run out in terms of being able to arrive there safely with the arrival of tropical storm force winds expected in southwest Florida as early as tonight. And so for those that you're running out of time to make that last-minute decision to get there safely. So I would encourage anyone that is planning to just stay home and ride it out to please leave as soon as possible so you can get where you're going safely. We're already seeing the outer bands of Irma impact portions of Collier County, and it's just getting started. From here, conditions aren't going to get better.
We saw the evacuations from Harvey afterwards. Now, again, it's difficult to get water out of the Houston area the way that's structured there. Water will tend to flow a little bit better here in South Florida. But I still remember one person, he was on his roof, he called 911, a helicopter came in, he had brought his stuff up. When the helicopter came in, it blew all of his, whatever he had left, into the water, and he says, this is all I have, this is all I've got. And that's what will happen to some folks that are in some of these really dangerous locations where the storm surge is coming in. Hopefully everybody is out of those locations, but if you get flooded, you're disconnected from everybody for a time to come, so why not?
Right. Even those that do have access to a building that's 6, 7 stories above and think that they'll be safe from this storm surge that we're talking about, potentially reach 12 feet. Well, you might be higher than it, but how are you going to get down? You will be isolated and then putting yourself at risk, and those trying to then come and help you at risk.
Absolutely. Maybe we can take zoom in tighter on this Doppler radar here and take it full and take a close inspection of what's happening now across South Florida, keep you up to date on these latest rain bands wrapping around Hurricane Irma. The brightest yellow you see around the eye, that is the eye wall scraping along the coast of Cuba. Hasn't quite made that north turn yet. This is South Florida right here. We saw a big band push right through North Key Largo, and now pushing off the west coast, went through Homestead. There's another band right on the bottom of your screen as well. That's another outer band that will continue to rotate around the storm. Now, there's not a lot of north movement yet on these bands because the storm hasn't turned to the north yet. But once it makes that turn, these bands are going to start to progressively push further north. And then that's why you can look outside and say, well, it doesn't seem so bad right now. Conditions worsen so fast. Very quickly in a hurricane. Very quickly. And we don't see that northerly component yet to Irma, still moving west at about 9 miles per hour. But taking a look at these precipitation rates, we're anywhere from an inch to almost 2 1/4 inches of rain per hour in some of these rain bands. It's extremely heavy rain, and we're also starting to see some of that rotation just with these bands whipping around. So we are looking at the tornado threat through portions of Collier County as it stands right now, as well as the heavy rain already falling through portions of the area. You know, days ago, as I was up broadcasting at our station, we were discussing the hurricane, and I talked to the producers, and I said, okay, no, we're days out. We've got a Category 5 storm. This storm is going to weaken as it pushes towards the Cuba area. Just please don't make the lead story that the hurricane has weakened, because that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about a major, powerful storm. It is now a Category 3 storm with winds at 125 miles per hour. But a Category 3 storm with these types of winds is huge, and plus the structure of the storm is in place. It's so big that as it goes back over those waters, it has the ability to intensify much more quickly. It doesn't have a 15, 20-mile-an-hour wind over the top of a hurricane can actually destroy the whole hurricane. It's something so simple, but it's not there. And so we're not going to get that wind shear. A hurricane is just, it's a natural machine where you have that wind going counterclockwise in, and then it gets to the top, and then it evacuates out the top. So when you look at the cloud pattern, in fact, maybe we can show a satellite loop, maybe the visible satellite loop if you happen to have that one available, and watch the way the hurricane spins here. You see the counterclockwise flow. So everything's going the opposite of a clock down towards the center, but notice the cloud cover in the outer rims going in the opposite direction. You see it towards Naples. That's the air evacuating out of the top of the storm, and that's needed. If you don't have that, the storm will collapse. When you see a concentric hurricane like this when you see those edges around the entire storm and it's a perfect circle, that means there's no wind shear, there's no weakening due to that. The weakening that we've just seen is because the eye is getting friction now, the eye wall over the land. But the clouds aloft, it's the perfect structure for a storm that is ready to regain strength as soon as it hits that water again. And it will, and that is why it is forecast to make landfall in Key West as that Category 4 hurricane once again, and will remain that status as long as the current track verifies as it tracks into southwest Florida. Here's a look at that tropical satellite. Man, it's just a massive, massive storm. And remember, we're looking at hurricane force winds 70 miles outside of the center, so 140 miles across.
tropical storm force winds, so 40 to 70 miles per hour. We're looking at 195 miles outside of the center, which means almost 400 miles across in terms of the tropical storm force winds. And that leaves a very wide path of destruction when we're looking at that strong storm that far away from the center.
And we'll see that in South Florida as it moves further inland, that those edges will shrink in rather quickly. But the last frame of this satellite loop showed basically what you're seeing in the orange right here, those hurricane force winds. In fact, I think we've got hurricane force winds probably in the orange with major hurricane force winds in the red area in the center. So there again is the track, which is the same from the National Hurricane Center as it was before. Category 3 storm at 125 miles an hour, wind gust to 155. Those are the maximum now. Pressure has come up a little, means we have some weakening. But, Danny, there it is now. This is Sunday at 8 o'clock in the evening, 140 mile per hour winds, maximum winds with higher gusts as it comes across, say, Sanibel Island and Cape Coral.
And you can see the hurricane force wind fields encompassing, which is that orange shading, encompassing the entire peninsula. The major hurricane force, which is category 3 or higher, through southwest Florida, including our inland counties. So we are looking at all of southwest Florida having these major hurricane impacts. And
then you see as it goes to just north of Tampa, you saw that red circle just shrink right on down. And that's because, again, we get that weakening effect. I do want to mention we had that big area of red showing up, those hurricane force winds right along the coast. That's where you get the maximum gusts that we're talking about. As you move inland, again, the wind starts to roll, if you will, over the trees. It starts to become more gusty, and it's then some high rises. Some of the high rises, maybe up in Fort Myers there, that's where, even though you can be inland a little bit, but then the further up you go in a high rise, you're going to get more wind, the better chance for windows to be blown out, and some structural damage as well. So the strongest winds are usually always along the coastline, but because this storm is so massive, it will be penetrating much further inland than your typical hurricane.
And here's your chance of hurricane force winds as we head into the next couple of days. You can see percentage-wise, it's I don't want to say 100%, but it's getting there. You can see as we increase with time, right now, southwest Florida's coast, all in that 70, 80, 90 percentile. And the chance is almost a sure thing, I would say. It's close to a sure thing, as someone who forecasts weather is comfortable saying, right? Any shift even to the east or west at this point still puts us in that hurricane force wind field. And as you mentioned, the models seem to be coming to better agreement on this track.
Yeah, and so we see in this latest report moving west at 9 miles per hour. That's dropped down the speed just a little bit.
Yes, has slowed.
But here's the turn right here in our future cast to the north. That turn hasn't happened. That's the next thing that the Hurricane Center is watching for, and we'll be keeping a close eye on the track through the radar of where that eye is going to go, because as soon as it makes the turn, the track is going to be almost guaranteed from that point. And then if this is the track, there you see it, folks. It's tough to look at these pictures here of a major Category 4 hurricane coming right over southwest Florida, right over Sanibel Island and Captiva and Cape Coral and Fort Myers, and then moving up towards the east side of Tampa.
And this really is playing out in front of us, worst case scenario, and that's what we hope that you at home have prepared for. Those who are still on the fence about evacuating, it's time to do so as soon as possible. Get to those shelters as we head into even this afternoon into this evening.
So we'll keep everybody updated here. Obviously, we'll be covering this wall to wall here. There's been all kinds of information coming in. I think the governor's done a great job in getting information out from all the different organizations, and we've been gathering that information here as far as shelters go, shelters filling up, shelters allowing pets now because they don't want to turn people away. I know that was a big thing in Houston, and I really think that had a lot to do with it. There were people who just wouldn't leave because they weren't going to leave their pets, and they couldn't bring those pets with them. So we'll wrap it up here for now. But again, we're going to be with you all afternoon and night, and as long as it takes.
Chris, Jane?
All right, thank you very much.
Great job, you guys. Speaking
of the governor, just got some new numbers from the governor's office. The Department of Emergency Management now reporting 6.3 million Floridians have been ordered to evacuate. So that's an increased number just from yesterday. As of right now, in statewide, there are 320 shelters open, about 54,000 people in those shelters, and power outages. And this is something that is going to rise a lot, and it is still early. Most of these are in the Miami area, but about 25,000 1,000 people without power right now in Florida. And one other plea from the governor's office right now, they'd like to have about 1,000 volunteer nurses, EMTs, those sorts of things to go into special needs shelters.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of hospitals, want an update on the Charlotte County Healthcare Emergency Department there. It says no services are available at Bayfront Health Punta Gorda at this time. That is because they are consolidating their efforts and their resources. So it will be the Bayfront Health Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda system. They have consolidated to Bayfront Health Port Charlotte, and then Bayfront Health Punta Gorda is currently closed. There are mandatory evacuations up and down our viewing area for those coastal communities, and in the last half hour or so, they called for a mandatory evacuation for Zone B in Lee County, which is so much of Lee County. Danny said that where she lives, and we are safe together in studio right now, but she would be evacuated at this time.
And a large part of Cape Coral as well. I mean, to give you some indication, if you're familiar with Cape Coral, it's basically south of Pine Island and west of Chiquita. So that's a pretty significant part of Cape Coral. In addition to those evacuations, new mandatory evacuations in Lee County, also seeing additional mandatory evacuations in Collier County. And speaking of Collier County, we want to go to Tony Russell, who is in Collier County at Vanderbilt Beach. We've been watching the conditions there. Tony, how are they looking right now?
They're fine, actually. You know, we've seen a little bit of wind picked up. We've seen a little bit of drizzle here and there. Obviously, kind of a little spooked out when that tornado warning was issued a couple hours ago, but obviously it expiring and causing no issues out here. The majority of the people that are coming out here to the water, you know, coming out here to the Gulf and coming out to the beach, the majority of them, they're just wanting to see the beach before it's too late. And even though they've been asked to and told to be part of a mandatory evacuation, you know, I've spoken to people who are inside the mandatory evacuation zone. Some are still going to ride this out, and they still want to see the beach before the hurricane hits. So a lot of people are out here just trying to enjoy, if they can, you know, what's left of the beach before the hurricane hits. Again, a lot of people walking up and down. We saw some people even at one point get in the water. So not only that, you do have some people frantically using some of the sand from the beach to kind of what seems to be do some sandbagging for their homes. And again, there's a little bit of a traffic issue here, but it's not like any other Saturday if you come out to the beach here, so you kind of know there's a traffic issue at the beachhead. But a lot of people just trying to check out what's going on. And then again, probably in the next couple of hours, go to safety. So reporting live here at Vanderbilt Beach, Tony Russell, Fox 4 in your corner.
All right, Tony. Yeah, definitely won't be like that for very much longer. Those folks need to get to safety. All right, so since Tony was talking, actually got a new release from the Collier County government, an update on which shelters are open there. This has been something we've been tracking all morning long because we've seen some shelters open and then almost immediately, in some cases, in about an hour, they fill up. And so people are told to wait, and they'll be taken to another shelter, and long lines, everything else. So this is important information. Here's what shelters are open right now and that are accepting new people. There's a shelter at Pinecrest Elementary, at Highlands Elementary, at Laurel Oak Elementary, and at Vineyards Elementary. Vineyards and Laurel Oak are in Naples, Highlands in Immokalee, and Pinecrest in Immokalee as well.
All right, well, that's encouraging because people are being shuffled from shelter to shelter, so they're beginning to reopen or open up some new shelters for you. Also want to let you know that in Hendry County, LaBelle High School, which was a shelter, is not accepting evacuees now, so they are asking people to seek shelter at a different location. Here are a couple: Country Oaks Elementary, LaBelle Middle School, Up the Grove Elementary, and for special needs, West Glades Elementary. So that's the update on shelters in Hendry County. Also at noon, so starting right now, 95.3, our sister station, WOLZ, is now streaming us on their station and will be We'll be on WOLZ and all of our iHeart sister radio stations at some point. But right now, 95.3, thank you. We are going to be with you through Hurricane Irma.
The key there is we will still be able to get out information even when the power goes out and you can't see us on TV. We were talking about shelters. There are a lot of people who can't get to shelters. Maybe they have a disability or they don't have a car and they can't get to a shelter right now. So here's what the city of Fort Myers is doing. They're partnering with Lee Tran, and they're going to get those people to shelters, and here's how they're going to do it. They're going to send out the Lee Tran vehicles, and between 9:30 this morning and until 3:30 this afternoon, they're going to stop by these neighborhoods once an hour, and the neighborhoods are Dunbar, Edgewood, Jefferson Park, Manuel's Branch, Morningside, Rainbow Grove, and Velasco Village. So the vehicles will go in there about once an hour. They will look for people who need rides to shelters, and they will give them rides to shelters.
And then this just from the Lee County Emergency Management Group. After the storm, they're saying lighted intersections may not be working correctly, so they're warning everybody to treat all lighted intersections as a four-way stop and be cautious. But that is even if you can get out of the house or your apartment and make your way driving along the roads. We are expecting some heavy flooding, torrential rain, in addition to high, strong, gusty winds. And on top of all that, what is really the danger here now is storm surge.
Right, and, you know, we mentioned this earlier. We are at a point now where we're only a few hours away from even being able to be on the roads anymore. Once those winds get up to 40 miles an hour or so, that's when the police officers say they're not going on the roads anymore because it's not safe to drive in those type winds. They're advising other people don't drive either. So we know from Danny that those winds, those strength winds, are fairly close. A matter of this evening, maybe a little later than that, and you're not going to be able to drive outside anymore either.
Some of those outer bands, again, touching Collier County. And as we wait for Hurricane Irma to make that turn, a lot of people are seeking shelter. They're making that getaway and that last-minute evacuation. It was a plan A. They thought they would be okay, hunker down at home. It is changing, and they're swiftly seeking shelter. Sam Sosa is at one of those shelters now. She is in Collier County. Sam?
Well, guys, the shelter I'm at, you can see, is at full capacity. They closed the doors, I would say, about an hour ago. You still see some people lingering here, though, because they're waiting for some kind of transportation. They said they would have buses for them. We haven't seen any buses yet, but that is the info that I was given, that buses would come over here to bus people over to Immokalee. Over there, like you guys said, Laurel Oak Elementary is being opened as a shelter. There's a couple of other shelters in the area. Let me list them off. Again, I don't have the status on whether these are still open or not, but Golden Gate Elementary Intermediate, Golden Terrace Elementary Intermediate, Golden Gate Middle, Golden Terrace Elementary is at capacity, Lake Trafford Elementary and Pinecrest Elementary in Immokalee. Those are also open. Those were open at 9 a.m. We don't have that status on what capacity it's at, but this one is definitely, as you can see, full to capacity. A lot of people are upset. A lot of people are frustrated. As you guys were saying, people are being shuffled around from shelter to shelter because they're filling up so fast, and this just shows how seriously people are taking this storm. It's no joke. This is time. If you haven't evacuated and you're in one of these areas, the storm surge is going to be extremely serious. You need to get into a shelter, and that's exactly what people are doing. So it's good to see that, but also just heartbreaking to see people, you know, a little bit frantic, honestly, trying to get into shelters. Of course, we're going to update you guys as soon as we get word on any more shelters that are open. As soon as we get that information, it will be on our website, fox4now.com, and we'll bring it to you, of course, live on air as we continue streaming. For now, I'm live in Collier. Sam Sosa, Fox 4, in your corner.
Thank you, Sam. Yet another situation where a shelter is full and is causing a lot of frustration for people, understandably, through Collier County. All
right, we are waiting for Governor Scott to have his latest news conference. This would be his second one today. Expect to get an update on a number of things, including some really staggering gas information that he released earlier.
Yeah, the ports are closed, so tankers are going to be limited bringing in.
Good afternoon.
There are not.
I just had a briefing with emergency management officials here in Orange County. The storm is here. Hurricane Irma is now impacting our state. South Florida is already experiencing